Have you ever wondered how desire and strategy have walked hand in hand across history? How the fluttering heart could be guided, not only by instinct, but by something subtler, something Machiavelli quietly observed. Machiavelli, the man who penned laws of power and whispers of control, also spoke of women, of attraction, of the choices men make when they let desire tangle with reason. He believed that men often see only the surface, the brightness of a smile, the elegance of posture, the honeyed words that wrap around the mind like a soft fog. Yet, beneath that surface, he taught, lies currents stronger than the calmest seas, currents that can sweep away even the most disciplined heart. Imagine yourself walking through a garden at twilight, each flower radiant, each scent intoxicating. One flower draws you in, yet it hides thorns. Machiavelli would ask you to pause, to breathe, to look not only at the beauty presented but at the root unseen. He asked men to notice subtle signs, how a gaze lingers too long, how praise is sometimes a measure of strategy, how softness may mask ambition. He believed that in the realm of love, as in the realm of politics, clarity of perception was everything. He spoke of rules that are not written in laws or etched in stone, but whispered in observation. One should not rely solely on affection, he said, nor on the seeming fidelity of the heart, for hearts can shift as quickly as wind bends the trees. Instead, a man should observe patterns, subtle consistencies, the quiet choices that reveal true intention. Even small gestures a hand offered too readily, a compliment too pointed can illuminate a mind at play. Yet Machiavelli's rules are not cold. They are not instructions to guard oneself in rigid isolation. They are a gentle urging to balance passion with wisdom. He reminds us that love and strategy are not enemies. They are twin currents in the river of human experience. By seeing clearly, by choosing with both heart and mind, a man might navigate the tides without being swept away. And perhaps the most comforting idea he leaves us with: the rules are not formulas, not chains, but guidance. They are reminders that the human heart, though tender and delicate, thrives when respected, observed, and understood, not just by the lover, but by the self. That each choice carries weight, and that to walk wisely in love is to honor both desire and discernment. So as you drift deeper into thought, let your mind wander through history, through gardens of shadowed desire, through lessons unspoken yet timeless. Let the gentle rules of perception settle over you like a soft evening mist, and know that even in choosing, even in yearning, wisdom can be your quiet companion. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why Machiavelli believed charm could be dangerous. Charm. It drifts softly through a room like the scent of night-blooming flowers, subtle yet impossible to ignore. It draws attention effortlessly, wraps the mind in gentle fascination, and tempts the heart to leap before reason has fully awakened. Machiavelli, with his careful eye on the machinery of human behavior, saw charm not merely as beauty or grace, but as a force that could quietly, inexorably, shift the currents of desire and influence. He warned men that charm, like the moon's reflected light on a dark river, can dazzle even the wisest, hiding depths that remain unseen until one is already adrift. He believed that charm is dangerous because it is deceptively simple. It masks intent. It creates an illusion of warmth and softness, yet behind its gentle smile might lie ambition, strategy, or subtle manipulation. A man, captivated by charm, might believe he sees the whole person, when in truth he sees only what is presented to him, a carefully curated image that pleases the senses while the mind remains quietly ensnared. Charm, Machiavelli observed, has a power unlike any other. It does not demand, it seduces. It does not coerce, it entices. And in its quiet seduction, it has the capacity to bend judgment, to cloud discernment, to make the improbable seem inevitable. Imagine walking through a hall filled with mirrored reflections, each one a slightly altered image of the person before you. Some mirrors flatter, some distort, some hint at truths just out of reach. Charm is like a mirror polished to perfection. It reflects the desires you already carry, the fantasies you already entertain, and yet, it does not reveal the unseen corners, the subtle shadows, the choices that whisper of hidden motives. Machiavelli's wisdom urges you to look beyond the surface, to search for constancy beneath the flicker of allure, to measure kindness with time and observation rather than immediate impression. He spoke not to make men cold, nor to extinguish their enjoyment of beauty and connection. Rather, he offered a gentle warning. Be aware, be mindful, allow fascination without surrendering judgment. Charm can enchant, yes, but it can also mislead. A smile can be a strategy. A laugh can be a calculated echo. A compliment, delivered with precise timing, can shape decisions long before the mind fully recognizes it. To ignore these subtleties is to allow enchantment to guide where reason should tread. And yet, there is comfort here too. Machiavelli's insight is not a command to distrust, but a call to perception. By acknowledging the delicate power of charm, you grant yourself the ability to respond with grace rather than haste. You see both the surface and the undercurrent. You feel the warmth without being swept into the current, and you can navigate human interaction with a quiet awareness that is both protective and profoundly freeing. So as you listen now, let the words settle like dusk on a quiet lake. Let the reflection of charm, both radiant and shadowed, drift through your imagination. Consider its allure, its danger, its gentle instruction. And in this contemplation, feel your mind slow, your heart soften, and your awareness expand, ready to wander through the delicate dance of desire, insight, and timeless wisdom. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The traits that make a woman politically dangerous. There is a subtlety to power that whispers rather than shouts, a force that bends events not through brute strength, but through quiet influence, through gestures, words, and decisions that ripple outward like the softest wind across still water. Machiavelli observed this subtlety in the hearts and minds of women, and he recognized that some, knowingly or unknowingly, carried a kind of power that could sway men, shape alliances, and alter destinies. He called it danger, but not in the sense of threat alone. It was the danger of influence, the kind that could quietly redirect a course of action, change the outcome of decisions, and awaken consequences that were not immediately visible. To understand these traits is to understand the delicate interplay of intellect, intuition, and ambition. Machiavelli noticed that certain women possessed an awareness of the world beyond what is said aloud. They observed patterns, understood motives, and often guided events with a grace so imperceptible that men might believe themselves fully in control, unaware of the subtle hand steering the outcome. These women were politically dangerous because their power lay in subtlety, an ability to affect decisions without direct confrontation, to inspire loyalty or doubt with a single phrase, to hold influence not through force, but through perception, charm, and insight. He cautioned that such traits could easily be mistaken for kindness or for naivety by those who saw only the surface. A gentle demeanor could conceal a sharp intellect. A compliant appearance could mask a mind quietly calculating, observing, and understanding the human currents around her. Machiavelli understood that the greatest danger is not overt opposition, but the invisible shaping of intentions, the subtle manipulation of perception, the quiet guidance of events while the world remains unaware. Consider the ways these traits appear in the ordinary rhythm of life. The patience to wait, to listen, to allow information to reveal itself. The skill to speak softly yet leave indelible impressions. The clarity to see motives where others see only desire. The discernment to act at the precise moment when influence will carry its greatest weight. It is not malevolence that defines this danger, but awareness, presence, and subtle strategy. And it is precisely because these qualities are often admired, even romanticized, that their influence can be so profound, so transformative, so quietly dangerous. Machiavelli's observation is not a warning to fear women, but an invitation to perceive, to understand, to appreciate the dimensions of human intelligence and influence. For those who recognize these traits, life becomes a landscape of possibilities, where decisions are made with care, intentions are read with attention, and relationships are approached with both respect and discernment. So as your mind drifts slowly through this reflection, imagine a quiet room filled with unspoken insight, a soft light illuminating the contours of understanding. Let the idea of influence, subtle yet potent, settle gently into your thoughts. Let it awaken in you both caution and awe, a quiet reverence for the ways humans through intelligence, intuition, and quiet power shape the world without ever raising their voices. And let this contemplation, as you sink deeper into relaxation, carry you toward a gentle awareness that wisdom, like charm and influence, often moves softly, yet leaves its mark forever. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. How men historically misjudged women. Machiavelli's warning. History has a gentle way of teaching through stories, through echoes of choices long past, through the quiet reverberations of decisions made with hearts half blind to truth. Machiavelli observed that men, often captivated by beauty, charm, or fleeting affection, repeatedly misjudged women not because of malice, but because desire can cloud discernment and infatuation can veil reality. Across centuries, he saw patterns emerge, the same mistakes, the same overlooked signals, the same consequences that rippled through kingdoms, households, and lives. Men have always been drawn to what glimmers first, the smile that radiates warmth, the laughter that feels like music, the elegance that seduces without effort. Yet Machiavelli reminds us that these are but surface currents. Beneath lies a vast undercurrent of intention, of thought, of quiet strategy. To misjudge is to see only the surface reflection of a river, unaware of the depth, the hidden rocks, the sudden eddies that could alter the course entirely. History, he observed, is filled with men who assumed innocence where there was calculation, who trusted appearance over insight, who allowed charm to guide judgment before reason could catch up. Consider the kings and princes of old, whose alliances were often determined by affection as much as by strategy. Some chose partners whose outward grace concealed ambition, whose soft words masked influence. Some failed to notice the subtle signs, how eyes lingered on opportunities, how speech hinted at desires beyond love, how actions, small and seemingly insignificant, revealed a mind always calculating. And in each case, the cost was not merely personal heartbreak, but political instability, lost power, and the quiet unraveling of carefully constructed plans. Machiavelli's warning is tender yet profound. Misjudgment arises when one allows emotion to dominate perception, when the seduction of charm eclipses the discipline of observation. To navigate human relationships wisely is not to extinguish desire, but to temper it with mindfulness, to recognize patterns before they cascade into consequence. A smile may illuminate, but it may also conceal. A touch may comfort, but it may also redirect. And the lesson is not cold calculation, but attentive care, an awareness that human hearts, like rivers, carry currents beneath the visible surface. There is, too, a contemplative beauty in this warning. For those who listen deeply, it is a guide toward discernment, toward gentle understanding of human nature. By acknowledging the tendency to misjudge, a man can approach connection with quiet awareness, balancing desire with perception, attraction with insight, affection with reflection. History then transforms from a series of mistakes into a tapestry of guidance, offering lessons that are both cautionary and enlightening. As you drift deeper into thought, imagine tracing these patterns through time, feeling the weight of past choices dissolve into understanding, feeling your awareness expand with each gentle observation. Let the soft echo of Machiavelli's caution settle over you. That misjudgment is natural, yet discernment is possible, and that the quiet practice of seeing clearly can become its own form of wisdom, a tender companion as you navigate the landscape of connection, desire, and human complexity. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Lessons on trust. What Machiavelli says about love. Trust is a delicate thread, woven slowly between hearts, stretched taut by desire, and often frayed by the subtle missteps of expectation. Machiavelli, the quiet observer of human nature, saw trust not merely as a gift exchanged in affection, but as a fragile instrument of survival, understanding, and connection. He knew that love, while tender and radiant, carries within it both vulnerability and opportunity, and that the ability to trust wisely is a skill both ancient and profound. Imagine sitting by a still river at dawn, the mist curling softly above the water, each ripple reflecting the first pale light of morning. Trust is like that river, deceptively calm on the surface, yet beneath, currents flow unseen. Machiavelli taught that in matters of love, men must learn to perceive these currents, to recognize both the gentle guides and the hidden undertows. To trust blindly is to float without awareness. To trust wisely is to allow the heart to open while the mind remains awake, attentive, and discerning. He observed that men often misplace trust, granting it to gestures that seem sincere, to words that sound true, to expressions that feel familiar. Yet history whispered a different tale. Appearances, however convincing, can conceal intentions. A kind look may be calculated. A soft voice may mask ambition. A loving act may carry undercurrents of influence, shaping decisions and loyalties in ways unseen until time has passed. Machiavelli's lessons urge caution not out of cynicism, but out of respect for oneself, for the other, and for the intricate dance that love requires. Trust, he suggested, is not a singular act, but a rhythm, a series of choices observed over time. It is measured in consistency, in integrity revealed through repetition, in the quiet moments when words fade but intentions remain visible, a gesture repeated without expectation, a promise honored even when unnoticed, a small act of care that aligns with larger truths. These are the markers of trustworthiness, subtle yet unmistakable to those who know how to observe. Machiavelli also recognized the beauty and vulnerability in allowing oneself to trust. To open a heart is an act of courage, a surrender that requires both sensitivity and discernment. He did not advocate cold distance or rigid calculation, but a gentle attentiveness, a mindfulness that honors the complexity of human interaction. For love, after all, is not merely strategy. It is a resonance between two souls, a shared rhythm of understanding, hope, and recognition. Consider the quiet power of observing without judgment, of listening to both words and silence, of feeling the texture of intentions beneath the surface. Machiavelli's wisdom invites men to cultivate this awareness, not as a shield against affection, but as a lens that brings clarity, allowing trust to grow organically, deeply, and sustainably. In this way, love becomes neither reckless nor blind. It becomes informed, tender, and resilient, capable of flourishing even amidst the unpredictable currents of desire and influence. So, as you settle into the soft embrace of thought and imagination, let these lessons on trust drift gently through your mind. Picture the river of human connection, flowing with both beauty and caution, shimmering with moments of genuine care, yet rippling with subtle complexities. Allow yourself to rest in the understanding that trust is neither simple nor immediate, but a rhythm, a meditation, a dance between heart and mind. And in this gentle awareness, feel both comfort and curiosity, knowing that love, guided by insight, can be as enduring and profound as the quiet river beneath the morning mist. Now, let's move on to the next chapter: how power dynamics influence attraction. There is a subtle energy in the spaces between people, an invisible current that pulls, nudges, and guides without words. Machiavelli understood that attraction is rarely just a matter of fleeting desire or beauty. It is intertwined with power, with influence, with the delicate balance of presence and perception. To be drawn to another is to respond not only to what is visible, but to the quiet signals of confidence, capability, and control that ripple beneath the surface, shaping choices in ways almost imperceptible. Imagine walking through a forest at twilight, where light filters softly through the leaves, and every movement, every rustle carries meaning. Just as the forest has layers, shadows, and textures unseen at first glance, so too does human connection. Power is not forceful here, not aggressive. It is quiet, pervasive, and magnetic. Machiavelli observed that men are often drawn to women whose presence commands attention not through loudness or dominance, but through subtle displays of intelligence, decisiveness, and self-possession. It is in the way she speaks, the calm certainty in her movements, the knowledge that she understands the currents of her world and navigates them with ease. But power in attraction is double-edged. It can illuminate, drawing admiration and respect, or it can intimidate, revealing a gap between perception and desire, a tension between aspiration and insecurity. Machiavelli noted that men who misread this energy often mistake charm for weakness, strategy for simplicity, confidence for arrogance. The result is misjudgment, an error that can ripple through both personal and political lives, altering decisions and shaping fates. Consider, too, how power dynamics shift with context. In one moment, a gesture of empathy or patience may reveal influence. In another, a quiet act of generosity may reflect control over resources, time, or attention. Attraction, he believed, is heightened when the balance of power is felt as mutual. When each person recognizes the presence, skill, and awareness of the other, and yet the interplay remains dynamic, fluid, and profoundly human. It is not merely about dominance or submission, it is about recognition, the unconscious reading of competence, stability, and insight that makes one presence feel magnetic in the mind and heart of another. Machiavelli also cautioned that being aware of power dynamics does not mean manipulating or exploiting them. It means understanding the currents of human connection with clarity and intention. By observing the subtle signals of influence, by feeling the rhythms of attention and respect, one can navigate attraction without surrendering reason, without losing sight of ethical or emotional responsibility. Awareness allows connection to deepen, trust to grow, and choices to be made with both heart and mind aligned. As you let these reflections drift gently through your consciousness, imagine the invisible threads of influence stretching between people, delicate yet strong, visible only to those who observe with care. Let your mind trace the soft patterns of attraction shaped by power, presence, and perception, feeling the gentle pulse of understanding ripple through your thoughts. And in this quiet contemplation, let both curiosity and calmness settle into you, like a soft evening breeze, reminding you that attraction is as much about awareness and insight as it is about desire, and that even the subtle currents of influence can be both profound and beautifully serene. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, Machiavelli's secret advice to protect your heart. The heart is both fragile and resilient, a vessel of light that can illuminate the deepest corridors of our experience, yet also a delicate instrument, vulnerable to currents unseen. Machiavelli, the quiet observer of human nature, understood this duality. He saw that love, desire, and attachment, while beautiful, could also leave one adrift if not approached with both care and awareness. And so he offered advice soft, almost whispered, on how to protect the heart without extinguishing its warmth, how to navigate the complexities of connection without surrendering to illusion. Imagine a garden at dawn, dew settling softly on petals, each droplet reflecting the tender light of morning. To walk through this garden is to move carefully, to notice both the fragrance and the thorns, to admire beauty without rushing toward it blindly. Machiavelli's counsel to men was much like this walk. Observe, reflect, and allow the truth beneath appearances to unfold slowly. Protecting your heart does not mean fortifying it with walls of suspicion. nor does it mean retreating from intimacy entirely. It means cultivating discernment, a gentle attentiveness that perceives patterns in words, actions, and gestures, subtle rhythms that reveal intent without judgment. He observed that men often trust too readily, drawn by charm, flattered by attention, or ensnared by desire. In such moments, the heart becomes vulnerable to manipulation, misjudgment, and sorrow. Machiavelli's advice is not to resist love, but to temper it with insight, to notice the consistency of actions, the alignment between words and behavior, the quiet ways in which intentions manifest over time. By paying attention to these subtle signs, one can allow affection to flourish while guarding against the unseen currents that might steer the heart toward harm. Consider, too, the rhythm of reflection, pausing before responding, observing before committing, listening not only to words but to silences, to nuances, to the spaces between gestures. In these moments, the heart learns to move in tandem with reason, allowing both courage and caution to coexist. Protection is not avoidance, it is presence. It is the soft vigilance that accompanies care, the mindful observation that honors both your own vulnerability and the complexity of another's mind. Machiavelli's wisdom extends further. He reminds us that self-awareness is the most potent form of protection. When a man understands his own desires, fears, and patterns, he is less easily swayed by fleeting charm or superficial allure. He can engage in love with both openness and clarity, feeling deeply yet perceiving sharply, connecting fully without losing sight of his own boundaries. So as you let these reflections settle gently into your mind, imagine your heart as a lantern on a quiet path, radiant, warm, and illuminated, yet guided by a steady hand, attentive to obstacles, attentive to beauty, attentive to truth. Let Machiavelli's quiet counsel flow over you, a soothing reminder that protection and openness are not opposites, but companions in the journey of connection. Allow your awareness to expand softly, like the first light of day across still waters, and feel the gentle assurance that your heart, when guided with wisdom, can wander freely, safely, and tenderly through the gardens of human experience. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, the fine line between desire and danger. Desire has a way of whispering to the soul, soft as a breeze yet persistent as the tide. It draws attention, bends thought, and encourages the heart to leap before the mind has fully awakened. Machiavelli observed that desire is rarely a simple companion. It exists always alongside risk, shadowed by consequences that often unfold only when one has already crossed the threshold of infatuation. In his reflections, he spoke of a delicate boundary, a fine line between the warmth of attraction and the subtle perils that accompany it. Picture walking along a narrow path at dusk, bordered by soft grass and hidden roots. The path is inviting, illuminated by fading sunlight. Yet one misstep could lead to a stumble. Desire, Machiavelli suggested, is like this path, alluring, beautiful, and compelling, yet layered with unseen dangers. The heart, easily enchanted, can be drawn toward what seems radiant, charming, or comforting, without perceiving the hidden currents beneath the surface. And so, the challenge lies not in avoiding desire, but in walking its path with awareness, sensitivity, and measured attention. He observed that men often mistake intensity for sincerity, charm for truth, and passion for stability. A bright smile or a captivating gaze can enchant and disarm, masking ambition, hidden intent, or misalignment of values. The danger is not always obvious. It emerges gradually, subtly, in the small inconsistencies, the fleeting hesitations, the moments when words and actions diverge. Machiavelli's insight is to perceive these subtleties, to allow the mind to accompany the heart, and to recognize that the allure of desire must always be balanced with discernment. Consider, too, the interplay of freedom and restraint. Desire can illuminate the mind, awaken creativity, and deepen connection. But it can also cloud judgment, invite distraction, and lead one toward choices that feel inevitable but are not fully considered. Machiavelli's wisdom invites men to embrace desire as a teacher, to let it guide attention without surrendering reason, and to see the contours of risk as part of the landscape of connection. In doing so, one learns to navigate both the joys and the dangers inherent in attraction. And there is a quiet beauty in this awareness, the recognition that vulnerability and strength coexist, that attraction and caution are not adversaries, but companions in the dance of human interaction. By observing the patterns of words, gestures, and intentions, a man can move through desire with clarity, experiencing the depth of connection without being swept away by its currents. It is a practice of attentiveness, patience, and respect for oneself, for the other, and for the invisible forces that shape human hearts. So as you let these reflections settle gently in your mind, imagine yourself walking that narrow path, feeling both the pull of desire and the stability of awareness. Let Machiavelli's insight drift like a soft mist around you, a reminder that love and longing carry both light and shadow. And in this contemplation, allow a sense of calm, curiosity, and quiet empowerment to emerge, guiding you toward understanding the intricate balance between the warmth of attraction and the gentle vigilance of wisdom. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why Machiavelli thought men often choose wrongly. Men, throughout history, have been drawn to what glimmers first: the brightness of a smile, the elegance of posture, the warmth of attention. Machiavelli, in his quiet observation of human behavior, noted a pattern that repeats across time. Men often choose wrongly, not out of ignorance alone, but because desire clouds perception, and the mind is tempted to see only what it wishes to see. He understood that the human heart, tender and impulsive, can be led astray by charm, beauty, and fleeting affection, missing the deeper truths that quietly shape character and intent. Imagine standing at the edge of a calm lake, seeing the sunlight ripple across the surface. The reflection is radiant, enchanting, yet it is not the whole picture. Beneath the water, currents flow unseen, carrying subtle truths that are easy to overlook. Machiavelli likened human judgment to this lake. The surface, where desire and impression dwell, can captivate, while the depths where consistency, intention, and integrity lie often remain hidden. Men, he observed, frequently make the mistake of choosing based on surface reflections, ignoring the quieter indicators that reveal the full nature of a person. He spoke of repeated errors, small yet consequential, trusting the wrong words, misinterpreting gestures, ignoring patterns that hint at hidden motives. The allure of novelty, the seduction of attention, the temptation to believe in immediacy. These forces can steer the heart toward decisions that, in retrospect, appear obvious in their misalignment. History offers countless examples. Kings, scholars, merchants, and poets, all captivated by appearances, only to realize too late that desire had blinded them to what truly mattered. Machiavelli's guidance is not a call to cold detachment, nor a suggestion to resist the warmth of connection. Rather, it is a gentle urging to pair the heart with discernment, to let awareness accompany longing, and to perceive patterns over time rather than fleeting impressions. Consistency, repetition, and subtle actions speak louder than charming smiles or fleeting compliments. He reminds us that wisdom lies in observation. The small gestures, the quiet words, the decisions made without an audience, they reveal the nature of character more accurately than any overt display of affection. Consider, too, the reflective power of self-awareness. Men who understand their own desires, fears, and tendencies are less easily swayed by superficial allure. Machiavelli's lessons suggest that by observing both oneself and another with quiet attention, one can choose not only wisely, but also with greater depth, engaging in relationships that honor both heart and mind. Choosing wrongly, he implies, is not inevitable. It is a consequence of distraction, haste, and the failure to notice what lies beneath the surface. As you let these reflections settle gently, imagine tracing the ripples of history, feeling the weight of repeated misjudgments dissolve into understanding. Sense the quiet patterns beneath the surface of attraction, the subtle signals that guide wiser choices. And in this meditative awareness, allow a calm certainty to emerge. That while desire will always stir, it need not mislead. That choice, when informed by both observation and reflection, can be as gentle and precise as the quiet touch of a hand upon still water. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, ancient wisdom that still applies today. Time has a way of folding upon itself, revealing truths that, though centuries old, continue to echo softly in the rhythms of our lives. Machiavelli's observations about love, trust, and human choice were born in an era long past, yet the wisdom they carry remains surprisingly present, quietly guiding us through the complexities of desire, connection, and discernment. Ancient knowledge, he suggested, is not bound by time. It travels like a gentle river, touching hearts and minds across generations, inviting reflection and understanding. Picture a candle flickering in a quiet room, its light dancing across familiar shapes while casting shadows that shift with the movement of air. Ancient wisdom is like that candlelight, subtle, illuminating, and capable of revealing contours unseen by the naked eye. Machiavelli's reflections remind us that the principles of observation, patience, and discernment are as relevant today as they were in the courts and streets of Renaissance Florence. The heart, he observed, remains a delicate instrument. Desire still tempts, charm still enchants, and the human mind still struggles to perceive what lies beneath surface appearances. He emphasized that patterns of behavior, small gestures, repeated actions, the alignment between words and deeds have always been, and will always be, indicators of true intention. Men of old who paid attention to these signs navigated relationships with insight, avoiding misjudgments and heartbreaks that seemed inevitable to those guided solely by impulse. Today, those same patterns emerge in subtle ways, in conversations, in the choices people make, in the alignment or misalignment between expressed sentiment and observed behavior. The underlying principle remains the same: awareness and careful observation guard the heart as effectively now as they did then. Machiavelli also underscored the importance of self-awareness. To understand another, one must first understand oneself, desires, vulnerabilities, and patterns of thought. This reflection allows the heart to remain open without surrendering entirely to illusion, enabling a balance between intimacy and discernment. Ancient wisdom, in this sense, teaches that the strength of a man lies not only in action, but in awareness, not only in engagement, but in reflection, not only in seeking love, but in recognizing the currents that guide it. And there is a quiet beauty in the continuity of human experience. Across centuries, despite changes in culture, technology, and society, the dance of attraction, trust, and choice remains much the same. What Machiavelli observed, the interplay of charm, influence, desire, and discernment, continues to shape our lives, reminding us that human nature, in its complexity, is both timeless and profound. As you settle deeper into thought, imagine tracing the delicate threads that connect past and present, feeling the gentle pulse of wisdom that flows across centuries. Let the lessons of observation, patience, and reflection seep softly into your consciousness. Allow the quiet resonance of ancient knowledge to guide your awareness, comforting you with the understanding that while desire may stir and hearts may falter, the principles of careful perception, thoughtful engagement, and mindful trust remain steadfast, timeless, and deeply reassuring. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Signs a woman might betray you, Machiavelli style. Betrayal is a shadow that moves quietly, often unnoticed, until it has settled fully into the spaces we once trusted. Machiavelli, in his meticulous observations of human behavior, recognize that it rarely arrives abruptly. It reveals itself in whispers, in subtleties, in patterns that are easily overlooked when desire clouds judgment. He believed that men who learn to observe these signs with careful attention, rather than ignoring them in the rush of infatuation, can protect both heart and reason from the quiet upheaval of deception. Imagine a candle burning in a dim room, the flame steady but flickering slightly with each passing draft. Betrayal, Machiavelli suggested, is much like that flicker, a small inconsistency, barely noticeable at first, hinting at currents that are stronger, unseen, and potentially disruptive. He taught men to pay attention to these subtle signals, gestures that seem rehearsed, words that repeat without sincerity, promises that waver under scrutiny, and attentions that appear generous yet are conditional or performative. Each small ripple can reveal a pattern, and patterns, when observed over time, disclose intention. One sign, he noted, is inconsistency between words and actions. A phrase of affection might be repeated with ease, yet the corresponding action, the quiet support, the willingness to stand by when circumstances are difficult, may be absent. Another subtle indicator is the selective distribution of attention, the way focus shifts toward opportunities or advantages that benefit her more than the shared connection. Machiavelli emphasized that these behaviors, small as they seem, are rarely accidental. They are the soft language of intention, whispering truths that the casual observer may overlook. He also pointed to the power of observation over assumption. Desire tempts men to believe in innocence where there may be calculation, to see loyalty where there is convenience, to assume devotion where interest is guided by circumstance. By practicing quiet attentiveness, listening not just to words but to silences, noticing patterns rather than isolated gestures, one can perceive the subtleties of character and avoid misjudgments that often bring regret. Betrayal is not always a grand, dramatic act. Often, it is the accumulation of small deviations, a series of choices that, when viewed together, reveal an underlying truth. Yet, Machiavelli's counsel is not rooted in cynicism, but in clarity. Observing these signs allows a man to navigate relationships with wisdom, to engage without surrendering discernment, and to feel love without being swept into illusion. The goal is not suspicion for its own sake, but a balanced awareness that honors both the heart and the mind. He reminds us that the world is filled with complexity. Human motives are layered, and appearances can mislead even the most well-intentioned observer. As you drift through these reflections, imagine the subtle cues unfolding before your mind's eye, each one like a small ripple across a still pond. Sense the quiet rhythm of intention, the patterns that speak more loudly than words, and allow your awareness to stretch gently, like dawn light spilling over a calm landscape. Let Machiavelli's insight settle softly within you. That betrayal often whispers before it shouts, that observation is a shield, and that by attuning your heart and mind to the subtle currents of human behavior, you can navigate the delicate dance of connection with both grace and prudence. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Hidden motives. What to look for. Early, motives are often like currents beneath a calm sea, invisible to the eye yet shaping every movement, every ripple, every wave that reaches the surface. Machiavelli understood that what is spoken aloud is rarely the full story. Words can charm, smiles can soothe, and gestures can comfort, but beneath them may flow intentions. Unseen, subtle, and quietly influential. He urged men to look beyond what appears, to perceive the hidden motives that guide behavior before they shape decisions, hearts, or fates. Imagine walking along a riverbank where the surface gleams with reflected sunlight, yet beneath, unseen eddies shift in silence. Human motives are much the same. The surface is visible and often enchanting, but the true forces that direct actions lie deeper. Machiavelli observed that men often focus too much on the visible, the immediate, the flattering, and in doing so, they overlook the patterns that hint at deeper intent. A compliment repeated too consistently, an act of generosity offered only when convenient, a sudden withdrawal at unexpected moments. These are subtle indicators that reveal more than words ever could. He emphasized observation over assumption, patience over impulse. Desire tempts one to interpret every gesture through the lens of hope, projecting intentions onto actions rather than perceiving them as they truly are. By cultivating careful attention, by noting consistency across time rather than isolated moments, a man begins to discern patterns, small behaviors that accumulate into a coherent reflection of character. The hidden motives are rarely dramatic. They are woven through the quiet, almost imperceptible choices that reveal priorities, inclinations, and the alignment, or misalignment, with truth. Machiavelli also encouraged reflection on context. Actions are seldom isolated. They exist within a network of circumstances, relationships, and consequences. A pattern of behavior that seems benign in one context may carry profound implications in another. By observing how attention, effort, and kindness are distributed, whether they are consistent, conditional, or opportunistic, one can sense the currents that guide decisions. Hidden motives, he suggested, are not secret conspiracies. They are subtle, natural extensions of desire, ambition, and interest, waiting to be perceived by those who look carefully. And there is a gentle, contemplative lesson here. Awareness of hidden motives is not a call to suspicion or mistrust, but an invitation to clarity, discernment, and emotional resilience. It allows the heart to engage without being blinded, to respond without being swayed, and to experience connection without surrendering reason. To perceive intention beneath action is to honor both oneself and the other, creating space for relationships that are conscious, informed, and profound. As your mind drifts through this reflection, picture the gentle currents beneath a river's surface, invisible, yet shaping every movement above. Feel your awareness expand, soft and attentive, tracing the patterns of behavior and intention with quiet curiosity. Let Machiavelli's insight settle gently over your thoughts, that motives, though often hidden, leave subtle traces, and that by observing with patience and clarity, you can navigate the world of connection with both grace and understanding, allowing both heart and mind to rest in informed tranquility. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Hidden motives. What to look for. Early, motives are often like currents beneath a calm sea, invisible to the eye yet shaping every movement, every ripple, every wave that reaches the surface. Machiavelli understood that what is spoken aloud is rarely the full story. Words can charm, smiles can soothe, and gestures can comfort, but beneath them may flow intentions. Unseen, subtle, and quietly influential. He urged men to look beyond what appears, to perceive the hidden motives that guide behavior before they shape decisions, hearts, or fates. Imagine walking along a riverbank where the surface gleams with reflected sunlight, yet beneath, unseen eddies shift in silence. Human motives are much the same. The surface is visible and often enchanting, but the true forces that direct actions lie deeper. Machiavelli observed that men often focus too much on the visible, the immediate, the flattering, and in doing so, they overlook the patterns that hint at deeper intent. A compliment repeated too consistently, an act of generosity offered only when convenient, a sudden withdrawal at unexpected moments. These are subtle indicators that reveal more than words ever could. He emphasized observation over assumption, patience over impulse. Desire tempts one to interpret every gesture through the lens of hope, projecting intentions onto actions rather than perceiving them as they truly are. By cultivating careful attention, by noting consistency across time rather than isolated moments, a man begins to discern patterns, small behaviors that accumulate into a coherent reflection of character. The hidden motives are rarely dramatic. They are woven through the quiet, almost imperceptible choices that reveal priorities, inclinations, and the alignment, or misalignment, with truth. Machiavelli also encouraged reflection on context. Actions are seldom isolated. They exist within a network of circumstances, relationships, and consequences. A pattern of behavior that seems benign in one context may carry profound implications in another. By observing how attention, effort, and kindness are distributed, whether they are consistent, conditional, or opportunistic, one can sense the currents that guide decisions. Hidden motives, he suggested, are not secret conspiracies. They are subtle, natural extensions of desire, ambition, and interest, waiting to be perceived by those who look carefully. And there is a gentle, contemplative lesson here. Awareness of hidden motives is not a call to suspicion or mistrust, but an invitation to clarity, discernment, and emotional resilience. It allows the heart to engage without being blinded, to respond without being swayed, and to experience connection without surrendering reason. To perceive intention beneath action is to honor both oneself and the other, creating space for relationships that are conscious, informed, and profound. As your mind drifts through this reflection, picture the gentle currents beneath a river's surface, invisible, yet shaping every movement above. Feel your awareness expand, soft and attentive, tracing the patterns of behavior and intention with quiet curiosity. Let Machiavelli's insight settle gently over your thoughts, that motives, though often hidden, leave subtle traces, and that by observing with patience and clarity, you can navigate the world of connection with both grace and understanding, allowing both heart and mind to rest in informed tranquility. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Charm versus loyalty. What history shows. Charm is a quiet fire, warming hearts, drawing attention, and creating the illusion that the world itself bends toward the one who possesses it. Loyalty, on the other hand, is a steady flame, unassuming yet enduring, providing light and guidance even when winds of temptation or circumstance blow harshly. Machiavelli observed, with the clarity of a keen mind and the subtlety of a poet, that men often mistake charm for loyalty, entranced by brilliance at the surface while overlooking the slow, persistent glow that sustains connection over time. Imagine sitting beside a calm fire in a dimly lit room. Sparks may leap suddenly, bright and captivating, yet they fade quickly, leaving only the steady embers to offer warmth and illumination through the long night. Charm is like those sparks, dazzling, seductive, often impossible to ignore. Loyalty is the glowing ember beneath, quieter, steadier, but infinitely more reliable. Machiavelli saw throughout history countless men who were enchanted by brilliance, magnetism, and immediate delight, only to find themselves adrift when the transient light of charm could not sustain the enduring demands of trust, collaboration, or devotion. He observed patterns that repeat across centuries. Rulers swayed by elegance over integrity, warriors entranced by charisma rather than reliability, lovers captivated by wit rather than steadfastness. In each case, charm drew the eye and heart, but loyalty determined the course of consequences. Those who chose wisely observed both dimensions, seeing beyond the surface allure to the character revealed in actions repeated over time. They understood that charm could ignite passion, but loyalty could preserve it through the quiet challenges of life, the subtle tests of circumstance, and the steady rhythms of shared experience. Machiavelli also emphasized that loyalty is not always flamboyant or loud. It is quiet, patient, and often unnoticed, except by those who watch carefully. It manifests in small, consistent gestures. A promise kept, attention given even when inconvenient, protection offered without expectation of reward, support provided when no one is watching. These patterns, subtle as they may seem, form the foundation of trust that outlasts fleeting brilliance, a scaffold upon which enduring relationships, romantic, political, or personal, are built. Yet charm is not without its place. It attracts, inspires, and reveals creativity, humor, and the beauty of human expression. Machiavelli's insight is that charm must be admired without being mistaken for reliability, appreciated without being confused for permanence. When men learn to perceive both qualities, the sparkle of charm and the steady warmth of loyalty, They navigate relationships with balance, curiosity, and depth, appreciating beauty while respecting substance. As you let your mind drift slowly through this reflection, imagine sparks dancing above quiet embers, light and warmth existing together yet distinct. Feel the gentle difference between immediate allure and enduring devotion, between brightness that excites and fire that sustains. Let this understanding settle softly in your awareness, that history favors those who perceive loyalty beneath charm, who respect subtle consistency alongside dazzling brilliance. And as your thoughts soften, allow this insight to guide you gently, teaching that true connection flows not from the fleeting glow of enchantment, but from the quiet, enduring flame of trust, constancy, and care. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, Machiavelli's tips for reading true intentions. Intentions are often like whispers carried on the wind, soft, almost imperceptible, yet shaping every interaction, every choice, every subtle movement of connection. Machiavelli understood that words can charm, smiles can comfort, and gestures can soothe. But the truth of a person lies not in the surface, but in patterns, consistency, and quiet behaviors that reveal deeper currents. To read true intentions, he suggested, one must learn to observe, to reflect, and to listen beyond what is immediately visible or said aloud. Imagine standing in a quiet forest at dawn, where sunlight filters gently through leaves, illuminating fleeting details while leaving shadows in other places. The shadows do not conceal danger, they reveal depth. In the same way, human behavior contains layers, actions, gestures, pauses, and repetitions that, when observed carefully, reveal the intentions beneath charm and appearance. Machiavelli observed that men who fail to notice these patterns often act too quickly on attraction, flattered by attention, or distracted by superficial beauty, and end up misjudging the character of those they trust. He advised men to look for alignment between words and actions. True intentions manifest in consistency, promises kept, attention given even when inconvenient, support offered without expectation of reward. A person whose words repeatedly fail to match deeds is revealing more than they intend. Patterns, not isolated incidents, expose hidden priorities. Machiavelli also emphasized the importance of patience. Intentions cannot always be discerned in a single moment, nor should they be judged solely by initial impressions. Observation over time provides the clarity that charm alone cannot offer. Another tip he offered was to notice subtle reactions in situations of stress or challenge. True character often reveals itself in quiet responses. The way one navigates disappointment, the consistency of respect when stakes are high, the honesty expressed when convenience tempts deception. These moments, small as they may seem, are windows into intention, reflecting priorities, values, and alignment between desire and action. Charm may attract attention, but repeated, authentic behavior signals truth. Machiavelli also taught that self-awareness enhances perception. A man who understands his own desires, biases, and vulnerabilities is better equipped to recognize patterns in others. Without this reflective understanding, one may project intentions onto another, seeing what one wishes to see rather than what exists. By observing both oneself and another with clarity, one develops a capacity to perceive subtle truths that guide wiser choices in love, alliances, and friendship. As you drift through these reflections, imagine yourself in that quiet forest, sunlight illuminating both beauty and shadow, noticing every small movement, every subtle ripple of behavior. Let your mind trace the patterns, sense the rhythm of alignment between action and word, and feel the gentle reassurance that clarity is possible when patience, observation, and reflection guide attention. Machiavelli's advice is timeless. Intentions, though often hidden, leave traces, and the careful, attentive observer can perceive them with quiet wisdom, balancing desire with insight, attraction with discernment, and connection with understanding. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. When love clouds your judgment, love has a way of softening perception. of casting a golden haze over the mind so that the heart sees what it wishes rather than what truly exists. Machiavelli, with his quiet but piercing insight into human nature, observed that men often allow affection to overshadow reason, mistaking charm, beauty, or attention for truth, and desire for clarity. When love clouds judgment, decisions are made not from careful reflection, but from the alluring immediacy of emotion, and the consequences, though subtle at first, can ripple through life in ways both gentle and profound. Imagine sitting by a still lake at dusk, the water reflecting the colors of a fiery sunset. The surface is beautiful, mesmerizing, and captivating. Yet beneath, the depths remain unseen, currents flowing quietly in directions unnoticed. Love, he would say, is much like this lake, enchanting on the surface, but complex and layered underneath. When judgment is clouded, the eyes see only reflections, missing the subtle truths that lie below the consistencies, patterns, and intentions that ultimately define trust and alignment. Machiavelli observed patterns across history. Men enthralled by brilliance or beauty, leaders captivated by cleverness, rulers distracted by charm, each acting on desire rather than discernment. The allure of attraction can blind the mind, causing one to overlook inconsistencies, ignore small warning signs, and dismiss subtle behaviors that, with clarity, reveal true character. When emotions dominate thought, even the wisest of men may make choices that seem obvious only in hindsight. He emphasized the importance of stepping back, of cultivating a space where observation accompanies feeling. To navigate love wisely, one must allow both heart and mind to coexist, perceiving patterns over time rather than acting on fleeting impressions. Machiavelli suggested paying attention to repetition, alignment between words and actions, and responses in moments of stress or challenge. True understanding, he observed, arises not from intensity of feeling but from sustained observation and reflection. There is also a quiet lesson in self-awareness. Recognizing one's own susceptibility to charm, flattery, and emotional sway is the first step toward clearer perception. Desire, while natural and deeply human, can distort perspective, amplifying certain qualities while diminishing others. By cultivating mindfulness, by noticing emotional reactions, pausing before acting, and observing consistently, one can navigate relationships with both intimacy and clarity, allowing affection to flourish without surrendering discernment. As your thoughts drift softly, imagine the lake at dusk again, its colors vibrant but its depths shadowed and mysterious. Let your awareness settle gently on the currents beneath the surface, tracing the subtle forces that guide connection, attraction, and judgment. Machiavelli's insight is a quiet reminder. Love may cloud the mind, but observation, reflection, and patience illuminate the truth. By attending to both heart and reason, one can engage deeply, feel profoundly, and navigate the delicate balance between desire and clarity with grace, understanding, and serenity. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, the fatal mistake men make in choosing women. History is filled with examples of men who, despite intelligence, power, and foresight, made choices that altered the course of their lives, often due to a single, recurring mistake. Machiavelli observed this pattern carefully. The fatal error is not in attraction, nor in desire, nor even in misjudgment of character in isolation. It lies in the combination of haste, unchecked emotion, and failure to perceive the subtle realities beneath charm and beauty. This mistake, quiet yet consequential, can ripple through life, shaping both personal and public fate. Imagine walking along a narrow cliffside path, the wind soft yet persistent, the edge hidden by mist. A single misstep can change everything. Choosing a partner without careful observation, without understanding patterns, intentions, and consistency, is much like stepping too quickly along that cliff. The allure of charm, the intensity of desire, or the seduction of immediate gratification can obscure deeper truths, and the consequences, though often invisible at first, grow in weight over time. Machiavelli's insight is that such misjudgments are rarely accidental. They emerge from the very human tendency to prioritize immediacy over reflection, to be swayed by surface appeal rather than enduring substance. He noted that men often fail to notice repetition, the quiet, consistent behaviors that reveal true character. Words may be eloquent, gestures enchanting, smiles radiant, yet the small, subtle actions over time speak far louder than any charm or beauty could. The fatal mistake, he suggested, is to allow initial impressions, flattery, or the seduction of novelty to outweigh these signs. History repeats this lesson. Kings enthralled by charisma lost empires. Merchants entranced by cleverness lost wealth. And ordinary men drawn by beauty lost stability. Machiavelli also emphasized the danger of projecting desires onto another, of imagining loyalty or intention where there is none. The human mind, easily swayed by affection, can interpret fleeting gestures as profound, charm as sincerity, and convenience as devotion. Such misreading, though subtle, creates the conditions for mistakes that feel irreversible. The wise observer, by contrast, learns to recognize alignment between word and action, attention and intention, desire and consistency. By cultivating patience and attentiveness, he can avoid the error that has felled so many before him. And there is a quiet, almost comforting truth in this lesson. Mistakes are not inevitable. Awareness, reflection, and careful observation can guide the heart, illuminating subtle patterns that ensure choices honor both feeling and reason. Machiavelli's counsel is not cold or cynical. It is meditative, an invitation to attune to the rhythms of character and behavior, to walk the path of connection with both curiosity and caution. As your thoughts settle gently, imagine tracing that cliffside path with careful, deliberate steps, feeling the wind of desire, yet noticing every small rock, shadow, and shift beneath your feet. Let Machiavelli's wisdom settle softly over you. Haste and infatuation can mislead, but patience, reflection, and attention to pattern guide the heart toward stability, clarity, and lasting understanding. And in this awareness, let both caution and hope coexist, softening the mind, steadying the heart, and allowing choice to become an act of quiet insight rather than fleeting impulse. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, how emotional manipulation worked in history. Emotions are the quiet architects of human behavior, shaping choices, guiding reactions, and often steering hearts in directions unseen. Machiavelli, with his keen perception of human nature, observed that emotional manipulation has long been a subtle force in relationships, politics, and alliances. It is rarely violent or overt. It works through charm, attention, promises, and carefully measured responses, creating attachments that feel natural, inevitable, and desirable, even as they quietly influence the mind and heart. Imagine a gentle river, flowing calmly under the sunday. At first glance, it appears serene, effortless, yet beneath the surface, currents move with intent, shaping the course of leaves, reeds, and small stones. Emotional manipulation, Machiavelli observed, functions in much the same way. It is not always immediately visible. It works through small, repeated gestures, the selective application of attention, and subtle influence over thoughts and perceptions. Those who fail to notice these currents may find themselves carried in directions they did not intend, drawn by forces as invisible as the undercurrent of a river. He noted that emotional influence often exploits desire, insecurity, or hope. Flattery can magnify confidence or inflate ego, creating dependence on approval. Affection offered at precise moments can cultivate trust, while withdrawal or silence can generate longing. These subtle patterns, repeated over time, shape perception, molding decisions and creating attachments that may not align with true intentions. History offers countless examples. Rulers manipulated through charm and attention, generals influenced by loyalty or fear, lovers ensnared by subtle psychological games. The heart, eager for connection, often fails to perceive these quiet currents until they have already shaped thought and action. Machiavelli's insight was not to foster suspicion, but to cultivate awareness. Observing patterns, noting consistency between words and action, and attending to how attention and emotion are offered can reveal whether affection is freely given or strategically applied. He advised men to perceive both presence and absence, to consider gestures within broader patterns, and to recognize that true intent is rarely immediate. It is revealed in the steady unfolding of behavior over time. There is also a gentle, reflective lesson in this understanding. Emotional manipulation, while often framed as deceit, is a reflection of human complexity. By observing carefully, one can differentiate between authentic attachment and influence, recognizing both vulnerability and intention. This awareness allows the heart to engage deeply without being led blindly, to feel profoundly without surrendering discernment, and to respond with insight rather than impulse. As you drift through this contemplation, imagine floating above the quiet river, observing both surface and current, noting every movement, subtle or obvious. Let your awareness trace the gentle undercurrents of emotion, seeing how influence can flow quietly yet persistently. Allow Machiavelli's wisdom to settle softly in your mind, that human hearts are delicate and complex, that emotional influence is often subtle, and that discernment, patience, and attention are the quiet guides that allow one to navigate attachment with both clarity and care. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, Lessons from Powerful Men Who Fell for the Wrong Woman. Power has a way of magnifying both wisdom and error, revealing not only the depth of strategy but also the vulnerability of the heart. Machiavelli observed that even men of great intellect, influence, and foresight often made decisions in love that altered the course of their lives, sometimes catastrophically. The allure of charm, beauty, and flattery can sweep across reason as swiftly as it does across the hearts of ordinary men, reminding us that no position, status, or achievement can fully guard against the subtle sway of attraction. Imagine a grand palace, its walls strong and imposing, yet a single gust of wind slipping through an unguarded window can scatter papers, shift tapestries, and disrupt the order carefully maintained within. So too, Machiavelli would say, can the wrong choice of partner unsettle even the most disciplined, strategic, or cautious man? History is rich with examples. Emperors captivated by charisma, generals enthralled by beauty, kings misled by charm. Their power did not shield them from human susceptibility. In fact, the stakes were often higher, the consequences more profound, because the decisions of the heart intertwined with the course of empires, fortunes, and legacies. He observed patterns in these errors, subtle yet revealing. Men often acted too quickly on desire, trusting appearances over consistency, charm over integrity. They projected their own hopes and fears onto those they admired, interpreting affection and attention through the lens of aspiration rather than reality. The lessons Machiavelli drew were simple yet profound. Observation, patience, and careful attention to patterns are essential, regardless of status or intelligence. The stakes may be higher for the powerful, but the principles of discernment remain universal. One subtle insight he offered was the importance of consistency and alignment over time. Repeated actions, responses under stress, and the distribution of attention reveal truths that beauty and charm may obscure. The powerful men who faltered often ignored these signals, focusing instead on immediate pleasure, admiration, or gratification. Machiavelli's reflections serve as a gentle caution. Even the most compelling allure cannot replace careful observation of intentions, patterns, and character. There is also a contemplative beauty in this lesson, that human vulnerability is not a weakness, but a reminder of shared experience across time and circumstance. Every heart, whether crowned or ordinary, can be misled if desire clouds discernment. By observing carefully, reflecting patiently, and attuning to subtle signals, men, powerful or otherwise, can navigate connection with wisdom, safeguarding both heart and legacy. As you drift slowly into thought, imagine tracing the lives of those who fell before. observing both their brilliance and their mistakes, noticing the gentle patterns and subtle signs that might have guided them differently. Let Machiavelli's wisdom settle softly over your awareness. Power does not immunize the heart. Desire can mislead even the most prudent, and discernment, patience, and observation are timeless tools for navigating attraction. Allow this reflection to mingle with the quiet of your mind, offering calm insight, gentle caution, and a sense of profound, shared humanity. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, the psychology of deception in relationships. Deception is often quiet, almost imperceptible, like a shadow stretching across a sunlit room. Machiavelli observed that human behavior is rarely simple. People are capable of masking intentions, shaping perceptions, and guiding hearts and minds without overt display. The psychology of deception in relationships is subtle, intricate, and timeless, woven into patterns of attention, affection, and influence that feel natural, inevitable, even desirable. To understand it is not to cultivate mistrust, but to cultivate awareness, a gentle, reflective perception that allows the heart to engage without being led blindly. Imagine a calm lake at dawn, its surface smooth and reflective, yet beneath, currents flow silently, guiding leaves and small debris along hidden paths. Deception often operates in much the same way. Beneath smiles, gestures, and words, unseen currents of intention shape perception, choice, and attachment. Machiavelli noticed that even the wisest men could be swept off course when the subtle signals of inconsistency, self-interest, or manipulation were ignored. The mind, attracted by charm or affection, can overlook these patterns, allowing desire to interpret them as devotion or care. He emphasized that small, repeated actions often reveal truth more clearly than grand gestures. Inconsistencies between words and behavior, attention that appears conditional, promises fulfilled selectively. All of these subtle signs provide insight into genuine intention. Deception is rarely blatant. It works quietly, accumulating influence over time, shaping attachment and expectation. Recognizing it requires careful observation, patience, and the willingness to see beyond the immediate allure of charm, beauty, or attention. Machiavelli also highlighted the role of human desire in deception. Our hopes, fears, and longings often create blind spots. The mind may fill gaps with imagination, project loyalty where none exists, or interpret strategic attention as affection. Deception exploits these natural tendencies, and those who fail to perceive it are often misled not by malice alone, but by their own expectations and emotional patterns. Awareness, reflection, and careful attention to patterns are therefore essential tools in navigating connection wisely. There is also a reflective lesson here. Understanding the psychology of deception is not meant to foster cynicism or withdrawal, but to illuminate subtle truths, enhancing perception and emotional resilience. By noticing repeated behaviors, observing alignment between words and action, and attuning to subtle cues, one can engage authentically, appreciating connection while protecting both heart and mind. Deception is part of the human landscape, but discernment allows one to navigate it with clarity, grace, and calm. As you drift into contemplation, imagine tracing the quiet currents beneath that reflective lake. Noting every shift, ripple, and movement, let your awareness extend gently, sensing patterns beneath surface appearances, observing without judgment, and feeling the subtle rhythms that guide intention. Allow Machiavelli's insight to settle softly in your mind. Deception, though often subtle, leaves traces, and with patience, reflection, and attentive observation, the heart can move freely, perceiving truth while remaining open, tender, and serene. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Famous historical couples and their mistakes. History often reads like a tapestry of brilliant achievements, monumental decisions, and quiet failures. Among these, the choices of those who loved and sometimes misjudged love stand out as profoundly human. Famous couples, celebrated for their passion, charisma, or influence, also teach subtle lessons in error, desire, and the delicate balance between heart and reason. Machiavelli observed that even the most powerful and intelligent individuals could fall prey to the allure of charm, beauty, or flattery, demonstrating that mistakes in love are universal, timeless, and deeply instructive. Imagine a palace at twilight, its halls grand and echoing, the flicker of candlelight reflecting off tapestries of history. Within these walls, whispered conversations, strategic alliances, and intimate connections unfold, each shaping not only personal lives but sometimes entire nations. Historical couples, whether rulers, generals, philosophers, or visionaries, often made choices guided more by emotion than observation, allowing desire to overshadow discernment. Small, repeated patterns of behavior went unnoticed. Subtle inconsistencies were forgiven too readily, and charm often triumphed over loyalty. Machiavelli would gently remind us that mistakes in these relationships were rarely isolated incidents. They were cumulative, arising from repeated choices, unchecked impulses, and the human tendency to project hope onto others. Kings enthralled by brilliance lost empires. Queens captivated by flattery shaped alliances at great cost. Generals and strategists misread intentions and found themselves led astray by the seduction of appearance over substance. The lessons lie in the quiet details, in the subtle gaps between words and actions, in the small behaviors that, when observed, reveal character more truthfully than grandeur or charm ever could. Observation, patience, and reflection are the tools Machiavelli recommended, not cynicism or distrust. He advised that one notice patterns over time, recognize alignment or misalignment between intention and action, and consider how attention is distributed. Those who fail to see these currents too often repeat the mistakes of history, mistaking passion for truth, immediacy for loyalty, or beauty for reliability. The consequences, while sometimes hidden at first, gradually shape decisions, reputation, and legacy. Yet there is also a quiet, comforting lesson here. History's couples remind us that human vulnerability is universal. Intelligence, status, or accomplishment cannot prevent emotional misjudgments. But awareness, reflection, and discernment can guide the heart gently, helping one engage in connection with both openness and clarity. By observing patterns, listening to subtleties, and balancing desire with insight, one can navigate relationships with a sense of quiet wisdom that honors both the heart and reason. As you drift into reflection, imagine walking through those grand halls, observing the lives, choices, and errors of those who came before. See their charm, witness their misjudgments, and notice the subtle patterns that shaped their destinies. Let the lessons settle softly into your awareness. Love, desire, and attraction are timeless forces, but discernment, patience, and reflection illuminate the truth beneath the surface. And as your thoughts soften, allow these insights to guide your own heart gently, teaching that wisdom and connection comes not from avoidance, but from quiet attention, understanding, and grace. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, Machiavelli's own examples of love and betrayal. Machiavelli's observations of love were never purely romantic. They were strategic, analytical, and steeped in the nuances of human behavior. He noted that even affection, desire, and attraction are bound by patterns of intention, ambition, and subtle influence. In his writings and reflections, he pointed to examples where love intertwined with betrayal, showing how even the wisest men could be led astray when emotion overshadowed perception and charm obscured true intentions. Imagine a quiet study at dusk, the walls lined with books, the flicker of candlelight illuminating pages worn by careful reading. Here, Machiavelli examined not only the mechanics of power, but also the delicate, often perilous dynamics of love. He observed that relationships are rarely simple. They are a web of desires, intentions, and subtle calculations, sometimes unconscious, sometimes deliberate. Betrayal, he noted, often begins with small deviations. A promise overlooked, a gesture performed selectively, attention given unevenly and grows imperceptibly, shaping perception, trust, and eventual consequence. One historical example he reflected on involves princes and courtiers, where loyalty was frequently tested by both affection and ambition. Charm and beauty could capture attention immediately, but consistent behavior over time revealed the alignment or misalignment of intentions. A ruler might be enamored by brilliance, yet subtly manipulated by flattery or selective generosity. The apparent devotion of a partner could conceal self-interest or strategic calculation. Through such examples, Machiavelli illustrated a fundamental truth. Love without discernment is vulnerable, even for the most astute. He also emphasized the importance of timing and observation. The true character of intention is rarely revealed in moments of ease or immediate pleasure. It emerges in subtle, repeated choices, in responses to challenge, and in how attention, care, and honesty are distributed over time. Those who ignore these patterns, swept away by initial attraction or superficial charm, often find themselves entangled in complications that could have been foreseen through careful reflection. Machiavelli's own examples of love and betrayal teach a gentle, reflective lesson. Awareness is not cynicism, but wisdom. Observing actions alongside words, attending to consistency, and allowing patience to illuminate intention enables a man to engage in connection with both authenticity and security. Love, while profound and essential, need not blind. Desire need not overshadow discernment. The interplay of attraction and insight, when balanced, allows relationships to flourish without surrendering judgment. As your thoughts drift softly, imagine sitting with Machiavelli in that quiet study, observing patterns of affection, noticing subtle signs of alignment and deviation, and tracing the currents of intention that shape human behavior. Let these reflections settle gently in your mind. Love, while powerful and captivating, carries patterns and signals that reveal deeper truths. By observing carefully, reflecting patiently, and engaging with both heart and reason, one can navigate relationships with insight, balance, and calm. And as your mind softens, allow the wisdom of these examples to flow quietly, teaching that understanding, attentiveness, and subtle perception are the keys to both connection and clarity. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. When royalty ignored red flags and paid the price. Royalty often moves within a world of grandeur, ceremony, and expectation. Yet even within these gilded halls, human nature remains constant. Machiavelli observed that powerful men, like all men, are susceptible to desire, flattery, and the allure of charm. When red flags are ignored, when subtle signs of misalignment or hidden intention are overlooked, the consequences can be not only personal, but historical, shaping the course of kingdoms, alliances, and legacies. Imagine a throne room, sunlight filtering through stained glass, casting colors on marble floors. All is visually spectacular, yet beneath the pomp and ceremony, subtle cues reveal truths that are easy to miss. A glance that lingers too long, a favor offered only under conditions, a hesitation in words. These are the red flags that, when ignored, quietly shape outcomes. Machiavelli understood that the eyes of desire often blind even the most discerning, causing rulers to mistake charm for loyalty, beauty for integrity, and convenience for devotion. History is rich with examples. Kings enthralled by the wit or allure of a consort, queens captivated by flattery or attention, and rulers swayed by immediate pleasure all experienced the slow unraveling of what seemed secure. The consequences varied. Political instability, betrayal of trust, loss of alliances, or private heartbreak. In each instance, the overlooked signals, the subtle inconsistencies in behavior, the selective attentiveness, the quiet self-interest accumulated like shadows before a storm. Machiavelli's lesson was clear. Power does not protect one from human vulnerability. and recognition of subtle warning signs is essential for both personal and political survival. He emphasized observation and patience as the antidotes to such vulnerability. Red flags rarely shout. They whisper, repeat, and grow in consistency over time. By noticing patterns, aligning words with action, and reflecting on subtle behaviors, one gains insight that transcends surface appeal. Royalty that ignored these signals often acted impulsively, seduced by immediate gratification or the illusion of loyalty. Machiavelli taught that awareness, reflection, and careful attention are the true instruments of prudence, more powerful than armies or alliances when it comes to navigating relationships and influence. Yet there is also a contemplative lesson for any heart, royal or otherwise. Noticing red flags is not cynicism, but mindfulness. It is the gentle awareness that allows engagement with both discernment and openness that teaches the mind to perceive patterns while the heart remains receptive. By observing behavior, considering intention, and attending to subtle cues, one can navigate connection with both clarity and tenderness, safeguarding trust without surrendering intimacy. As you drift into thought, imagine walking through that throne room quietly, noticing the colors, the light, and the subtle movements of those around you. Let your awareness trace the patterns, the small inconsistencies, the quiet signals that reveal intention. Machiavelli's wisdom settles gently here. Power, beauty, and charm are fleeting. Observation, patience, and reflection reveal enduring truths. And as your mind softens, allow this insight to guide your own heart, teaching that awareness of subtle warning signs is a form of quiet strength, a tool for serene, thoughtful, and informed engagement with others. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Women who changed history by choice or influence. Throughout history, women have shaped the course of nations, not only through birthright or title, but through choice, intelligence, and influence. Machiavelli observed that the subtle power of persuasion, strategic decision-making, and careful manipulation of circumstances often allowed women to leave marks far beyond what was visible at first glance. Their influence was rarely loud. It was quiet, deliberate, and, at times, transformational. They wielded charm, intellect, and social awareness like instruments, moving events, people, and even empires in ways that history sometimes records in whispers rather than headlines. Imagine walking through a sunlit corridor of a palace, where every door opens to a different story. Within these rooms, choices are made, strategies devised, and intentions revealed subtly through gesture, word, and presence. Some women, in moments of calm, leveraged insight and intuition to shape outcomes that would echo for generations. Machiavelli's reflections remind us that influence is rarely about overt power. It is about timing, observation, subtlety, and the understanding of human behavior. A word spoken at the right moment, a suggestion offered in quiet confidence, or attention given to the right person could shift allegiances, redefine strategy, or alter the course of events. Historical examples abound. Queens guided kings in matters of policy, consorts shaped alliances with subtle counsel, and advisors used their proximity to power to influence decisions without ever stepping into the spotlight. Their intelligence was often intertwined with understanding human desire, ambition, and ego. By observing patterns, anticipating reactions, and offering guidance at critical moments, these women became architects of destiny, quietly steering the currents of history. Machiavelli recognized that such influence, though often understated, demanded acute perception, patience, and the ability to navigate the complexities of emotion, loyalty, and ambition. But influence is not only strategic, it is also creative. Some women changed history through choice, by selecting partners wisely, by choosing moments to act decisively, by understanding both human nature and circumstance. Their choices, deliberate or instinctive, often corrected the missteps of powerful men, stabilized fragile alliances, or even averted catastrophe. Machiavelli saw in these examples the enduring truth that human connection is a landscape of subtle power, where wisdom, observation, and intentionality can achieve outcomes as profound as armies or legislation. There is also a reflective, almost meditative lesson here. Influence, when paired with awareness and patience, transforms possibility into reality. The subtlety of action, the careful observation of patterns, the strategic exercise of choice, all create ripples that can resonate far beyond the moment. Machiavelli's insights encourage not only recognition of these historical truths, but also quiet reflection on how attention, patience, and thoughtful action shape relationships, decisions, and life itself. As you drift into contemplation, imagine yourself walking down that sunlit corridor, pausing outside each door to feel the weight of history, noticing the gestures, choices, and subtle influences that ripple unseen across time. Let your mind settle on the quiet power of observation, the soft yet persistent force of deliberate choice, and the gentle art of influence that moves the world without noise. Allow Machiavelli's wisdom to flow gently into your awareness. That true change, in history and in life, is often guided by subtlety, insight, and careful attention, teaching that both influence and choice are tools to navigate existence with grace, awareness, and quiet authority. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Lessons from ancient politics and romance. Ancient politics and romance were often intertwined, creating a delicate dance where ambition, desire, and strategy moved together like shadow and light. Machiavelli observed that love and political influence were rarely separate in the lives of rulers, advisors, and citizens alike. Relationships could shape alliances, sway decisions, and determine the fates of kingdoms. In this delicate interplay, he saw patterns that repeated through history, offering lessons in observation, patience, and the quiet discernment necessary to navigate both hearts and power. Imagine the stone corridors of an ancient palace, echoing with measured steps, soft whispers, and the weight of decision. Within these walls, alliances were forged not only through treaties, but through subtle gestures, attentions, and affections. A ruler's favor could pivot on the counsel of a beloved, and the loyalty of subjects could hinge on perceived relationships within the court. Machiavelli recognized that the psychology of romance, when intertwined with politics, created both opportunity and risk. Affection could strengthen trust, but unchecked desire could blind judgment, allowing manipulation, misalignment, or betrayal to quietly unfold. History is filled with examples. Consorts who advised wisely and altered the course of policy. Lovers whose influence shifted allegiances, and powerful figures who fell into error by mistaking charm or attention for loyalty. These events illustrate that the heart, though deeply human, can intersect with ambition in ways that carry far-reaching consequences. Machiavelli's reflections emphasize that wisdom lies not in avoidance of emotion, but in observation and discernment. Noticing patterns, evaluating consistency, and attending to subtle cues can illuminate the true nature of connection and influence, guiding decisions that honor both desire and reason. He also highlighted the timeless lesson that human nature remains remarkably constant, even across centuries and cultures. Desire can amplify both clarity and error. Charm can seduce as easily as intellect can persuade. The interplay of romance and politics demands careful attention, as even small misjudgments can ripple outward, affecting alliances, reputation, and destiny. Machiavelli suggested that by cultivating awareness of patterns in behavior, recognizing alignment between words and actions, and maintaining patience before judgment, one could navigate these complexities with grace, insight, and prudence. There is a gentle, reflective insight here for the mind and heart. History is not only a record of events, but a guide to human behavior. Observing the subtle ways love and power intersect allows us to recognize patterns that inform contemporary choices. Awareness, patience, and reflection provide the means to engage deeply in relationships while maintaining clarity, understanding, and discernment. Machiavelli's lessons remind us that the principles of observation and insight are as valuable in the quiet corridors of emotion as they are in the chambers of power. As you drift softly into thought, imagine walking through those ancient halls, listening to the echoes of conversation, noting the quiet gestures, observing the interplay of desire and influence. Let your mind settle on the rhythms of human behavior, the repeated patterns of love and power, and the gentle wisdom that emerges from reflection and attention. Allow Machiavelli's insights to weave quietly into your awareness, that love and strategy coexist, that observation and discernment are essential, and that understanding the interplay between heart and ambition illuminates not only history, but the subtle currents of your own life. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Powerful women who outwitted powerful men. Power is often imagined as the domain of men, marked by crowns, armies, and formal authority. Yet history quietly tells a different story. One in which women, through intellect, observation, subtlety, and strategy, outwitted those who seemed invincible. Machiavelli observed that influence, whether exercised through charm, insight, or deliberate action, could surpass overt power. Women who understood the patterns of human behavior, the desires and vulnerabilities of those around them, often shaped events as profoundly as the most celebrated rulers, leaving traces of their quiet genius in the course of history. Imagine a sunlit chamber where a ruler's advisors discuss matters of state. Yet within this room, a woman unnoticed by many, underestimated by some, observes gestures, listens to tone, and traces the rhythm of intentions. She recognizes the gaps between words and action, sees the subtle inconsistencies in decision-making, and understands the desires that drive those in power. With patience and strategic choice, she positions herself not in opposition, but in alignment with her observations, subtly guiding outcomes without overt confrontation. Machiavelli would note that such skill is timeless, requiring both reflection and insight, a deep understanding of human nature, and the quiet courage to act deliberately in moments that matter most. History offers countless examples: queens whose counsel a king could not ignore, consorts who swayed critical decisions through subtle influence, advisors whose insight saved kingdoms from ruin. Their power was not granted by title alone, but earned through acute perception, patience, and the ability to navigate emotional and political currents simultaneously. Machiavelli recognized that these women exercised influence in ways both profound and understated, leveraging strategy, timing, and understanding to outwit men whose authority seemed absolute. Yet their skill was never solely political. It was deeply human. They understood the dynamics of desire, ambition, and loyalty, observing patterns of behavior over time and using this insight to create outcomes that honored both their goals and the wider currents around them. Charm and grace, when paired with observation and patience, became instruments of subtle power. Machiavelli's reflections suggest that true influence lies not in overt force, but in understanding, strategic action, and the careful orchestration of intention. There is also a contemplative lesson here for any heart. Influence and wisdom are not about domination, but about perception, patience, and subtle guidance. By observing patterns, aligning action with insight, and understanding human behavior, one can navigate relationships, ambition, and desire with clarity, balance, and quiet authority. The women who outwitted powerful men remind us that subtlety and observation can rival power in its most visible forms, and that awareness, strategy, and reflection are essential tools for navigating both connection and circumstance. As your thoughts drift gently, imagine sitting in that sunlit chamber, observing the intricate interplay of intention, behavior, and subtle influence. Notice how careful observation, quiet insight, and deliberate action shape outcomes far more profoundly than overt authority alone. Let your awareness trace the patterns, perceive the subtleties, and feel the quiet rhythm of human behavior. Allow Machiavelli's wisdom to settle softly in your mind. True power often lies in perception, patience, and strategic understanding. and those who observe deeply and act with intention can influence the course of events with grace, subtlety, and profound effectiveness. Now, let's move on to the next chapter: how strategy played into romantic decisions. Romance is often imagined as spontaneous, unpredictable, and guided solely by the heart. Yet Machiavelli observed that even in matters of love, strategy subtly shaped decisions, behavior, and outcomes. Across history, those who wielded influence understood that relationships were not just emotional experiences but also intricate dances of perception, timing, and intention. Every gesture, every word, every choice could carry meaning beyond immediate desire, quietly guiding attachment, loyalty, and trust. Imagine a candlelit garden at twilight, shadows shifting as conversations drift softly through the air. In such moments, the interplay of attraction and strategy can be almost imperceptible. One smile, a gentle touch, a carefully timed word, all can influence perception and response. Machiavelli noted that strategic thinking in romance was not manipulation in its crude sense, but awareness. Understanding human tendencies, anticipating reactions, and aligning action with both desire and long-term intention. Those who mastered this delicate balance could foster connection without surrendering discernment, creating relationships that were both meaningful and sustainable. History provides examples where strategy shaped the course of romance. Leaders considered the alliances that a partnership could secure. Advisors observed patterns of loyalty and influence. Lovers noticed consistency and alignment over time. Machiavelli observed that failing to consider these factors often led to misjudgments. Desire alone, untempered by reflection, could blind judgment, leaving one vulnerable to misalignment, disappointment, or even betrayal. By contrast, strategic awareness allowed for connection that was attentive, intentional, and resilient, honoring both heart and reason. Yet strategy in romance is rarely overt. It is gentle, nuanced, and deeply intertwined with observation. One must notice repeated behaviors, align words with action, and attend to the subtleties of attention and care. Charm, beauty, and emotional intensity are not inherently misleading, but without careful reflection, they can obscure patterns, intentions, and character. Machiavelli emphasized that the wise approach to love blends awareness, patience, and insight, allowing one to engage fully while maintaining clarity, discernment, and foresight. There is also a reflective lesson here. Love, desire, and strategy are not contradictory. Observing patterns, considering intention, and aligning action with understanding enhances connection, rather than diminishes its authenticity. Strategy, in this sense, is a form of respect for oneself, for the other, and for the subtle forces that shape attachment. It enables one to navigate the currents of desire without losing sight of long-term clarity and alignment, blending heart and mind into a harmonious balance. As your thoughts drift gently, imagine walking through that candlelit garden, observing the subtle interplay of gestures, words, and intentions. Notice how small actions, repeated over time, shape perception and influence outcomes. Let Machiavelli's insight settle softly in your mind. Romance, like life, is guided by subtle currents, patterns, and strategy. Awareness, reflection, and intentionality allow connection to flourish while keeping discernment intact. And as you breathe deeply into this understanding, let your mind soften, your heart expand, and your awareness trace the quiet, intricate dance of desire, choice, and strategy that shapes the human experience. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Love as a political tool. Love has always been portrayed as the most personal and intimate of human experiences, a force of desire, connection, and vulnerability. Yet throughout history, Machiavelli observed that it often intersected with power, strategy, and influence. Love, in its many forms, became not merely a private emotion, but a subtle instrument in political maneuvering. Rulers, diplomats, and advisors recognized that attraction, affection, and attachment could guide decisions, sway loyalties, and shape the course of alliances. The heart, in such contexts, becomes both a compass and a tool, capable of altering destinies quietly, yet profoundly. Imagine a dimly lit chamber in a medieval palace, where whispers carry like threads, connecting people across corridors and courtyards. Within this space, gestures, glances, and carefully measured words weave a network of influence as much as intimacy. Machiavelli observed that love could act as a lever, persuading, aligning, or redirecting ambition in ways that armies and treaties alone could not achieve. It was subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, yet powerful, shaping perceptions and decisions over time. The ruler who understood the interplay of affection and strategy could turn a fleeting attraction into loyalty, a quiet counsel into decisive action. Historical examples are abundant. Monarchs, who married not only for passion but for political alliance, understood that the choice of partner carried weight far beyond personal desire. A queen's favor could alter the direction of diplomacy, a consort's insight could prevent conflict, and a lover's loyalty could stabilize a fragile court. Machiavelli noted that love, when wielded consciously, became a mechanism of subtle control, a channel through which influence flowed not through force, but through emotional and relational alignment. Even seemingly personal decisions were embedded within wider social and political structures, shaping both individual and collective outcomes. Yet this use of love was not always cynical or manipulative. It was often nuanced, requiring observation, patience, and emotional intelligence. The wise recognized patterns in behavior, discerned intention beyond charm, and timed their actions to align both desire and outcome. A single gesture, repeated consistently, could signal trustworthiness, while a carefully measured withdrawal might reveal priorities, test loyalty, or create space for reflection. Machiavelli's reflections suggest that love, while deeply personal, is inseparable from the broader patterns of human behavior, social structure, and the subtle mechanisms of influence. There is also a gentle lesson here. Awareness of love's role in shaping decisions does not diminish its beauty. Instead, it illuminates the delicate balance between emotion and strategy, heart and perception. By observing intention, noticing consistency, and attending to the subtle cues that shape connection, one can navigate relationships with both depth and clarity. Love becomes a mirror, reflecting not only the desires of the heart but also the patterns of influence that quietly shape life. As your thoughts drift, imagine the candlelight flickering across tapestries of a palace, shadows dancing as you observe the gentle interplay of affection, choice, and strategy. See how glances, words, and gestures ripple through decisions, shaping outcomes as subtly as water carves stone. Let Machiavelli's insights settle softly in your mind. Love is both a deeply human experience and a subtle instrument of influence. Awareness, reflection, and patience allow one to engage with love fully, perceiving patterns and aligning choices without losing tenderness or authenticity. And as your awareness softens into this understanding, let your heart feel both the beauty and the quiet power of love, moving gently through history, human nature, and the intricate currents of connection that guide every life. Now, let's move on to the next chapter: what history teaches about choosing wisely. History, when observed closely, is less a collection of dates and battles than a mirror reflecting human choices of strategy, judgment, and, most profoundly, connection. Machiavelli reminded us that the decisions of the heart are rarely isolated. They intersect with power, influence, and consequence. The question of whom to trust, whom to love, and whom to align with has echoed through the chambers of empires, the corridors of courts, and the intimate spaces of private lives. In these choices, the stakes are both personal and profound, teaching lessons that remain timeless. Imagine a quiet library, sun filtering through tall windows, illuminating shelves lined with the wisdom of centuries. Here, stories of triumph and misstep unfold in gentle rhythm. Kings captivated by charm, queens guiding with insight, lovers whose devotion became strategic influence, and advisors whose perception shaped destinies. Each story carries a subtle, almost hypnotic lesson. Discernment in choosing whom to trust, love, or follow is not merely prudent, it is essential. Machiavelli emphasized that observation, patience, and reflection are the instruments by which one navigates these decisions with wisdom. History reveals patterns repeated across generations. Those who allowed desire, flattery, or immediate gratification to cloud judgment often faced unforeseen consequences. Charm, beauty, or eloquence can captivate. Yet true alignment emerges through consistency, attention to patterns, and the discernment of underlying intentions. Machiavelli taught that wisdom in choosing partners, whether for love, counsel, or alliance, requires both attention and subtle perception. The consequences of misjudgment ripple quietly at first, then broadly, shaping reputations, relationships, and even the fate of communities or nations. Yet history also offers stories of triumph. Individuals who observed carefully, waited patiently, and aligned action with insight, navigated relationships with grace and clarity. They recognized that alignment between word and deed, attention and intention, desire and principle, forms the foundation of trust. Through such careful observation, they avoided the pitfalls that snared others, experiencing the deep fulfillment of connection without the blind vulnerability that often accompanies unchecked passion. Machiavelli's reflections suggest that the same principles guiding strategic political decisions, observation, patience, and discernment apply equally to matters of the heart. There is a quiet, reflective lesson here. Choosing wisely is both an art and a practice, blending intuition, observation, and reason. Awareness of patterns, attention to subtle cues, and the patience to allow clarity to emerge empower one to navigate attachment with insight. Love, friendship, and partnership become exercises in alignment, where heart and perception coexist harmoniously, allowing connection without surrendering wisdom. History, in its endless unfolding, provides the guidance, reminding us that the choices of the heart echo far beyond the moment, shaping life, influence, and legacy in ways often unseen. As you drift into contemplation, imagine sitting among the pages of history, observing the subtle choices that shape the lives of those before you. Notice the patterns of attention, the consistency of action, and the alignment between desire and intention. Let your mind trace the currents that link heart and discernment, allowing Machiavelli's insights to settle softly. That wisdom in choice, like a quiet river, flows steadily through time, shaping outcomes with calm precision. Allow this awareness to guide your own heart, fostering clarity, patience, and gentle discernment as you move through relationships, ambitions, and the delicate, intricate patterns of life itself. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, how desire can overrule wisdom. Desire is a force both beautiful and complex. It captivates, inspires, and moves us, often before reason has the chance to speak. Machiavelli observed that even the wisest men, those attuned to strategy, observation, and careful reflection, could be swept away when desire overpowered judgment. History is full of moments when longing, attraction, or emotional impulse guided decisions that logic would have cautioned against, moments where the heart led and wisdom silently waited, unheard. Imagine a twilight garden, where the air is thick with fragrance and shadows shift softly across paths lined with flowers. Here, choices unfold quietly, often unnoticed by those not paying attention. A glance, a touch, a lingering conversation all have the potential to ignite desire that seems immediate and urgent. Yet, desire does not operate in isolation. It interacts with perception, expectation, and subtle manipulation. Machiavelli understood that desire can amplify blind spots, causing one to overlook inconsistencies, dismiss warnings, or reinterpret behavior to fit hope rather than reality. In this way, the heart can lead the mind astray, not maliciously, but naturally, through its own intensity and urgency. History provides endless examples. rulers captivated by beauty, leaders enthralled by charm, and advisors entranced by cleverness, all acting in ways that contradicted prudence. Desire, while deeply human, has the power to obscure observation, delay reflection, and override discernment. Even men trained in strategy, attentive to patterns, and versed in caution could fall victim when longing eclipsed patience. Machiavelli noted that awareness of this vulnerability is itself a form of wisdom. Recognizing the force of desire allows one to pause, observe, and measure intentions, even amidst the intensity of emotion. Yet the story of desire is not only cautionary, it is also instructive. Desire reveals priorities, highlights values, and illuminates what the heart truly seeks. When tempered with reflection, it can guide toward meaningful connection rather than misjudgment. Machiavelli suggested that understanding desire, its patterns, its persistence, and its subtle influence can allow one to navigate it without being controlled by it. By observing alignment between words and actions, noting consistency over time, and reflecting on underlying intentions, one can allow desire to inspire rather than overwhelm judgment. There is a contemplative, almost meditative lesson here. Desire, unchecked, can cloud the mind. Yet observed with care, it becomes a guide rather than a trap. Awareness and patience allow the heart to participate fully in connection while preserving discernment. The interplay of desire and wisdom is delicate, requiring both attention and trust in one's own perception. Machiavelli's reflections remind us that human longing is powerful, but when observed carefully, it can coexist with insight, patience, and clarity, shaping choices that honor both heart and mind. As your thoughts drift gently, imagine yourself in that twilight garden, sensing the warmth of desire, yet noticing its subtleties, the small gestures, the repeated patterns, the alignment of intention and action. Let your awareness trace these currents quietly, feeling the interplay between impulse and reflection, heart and reason. Allow Machiavelli's insight to settle softly in your mind. That desire, like a river, flows naturally and powerfully, yet can be navigated with observation, patience, and gentle discernment. And as your awareness softens, let this balance guide your heart, teaching that longing and wisdom, when harmonized, illuminate the human experience with clarity, depth, and serene understanding. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, how Machiavelli's advice works today. Time moves forward, yet human nature moves in cycles. The principles Machiavelli observed centuries ago about desire, observation, strategy, and discernment remain surprisingly relevant today. Even in a world of smartphones, instant connection, and fleeting interactions, the same patterns of attraction, trust, and misjudgment continue to shape relationships. Machiavelli's advice, far from being archaic, offers a quiet lens through which modern men can navigate the currents of desire, influence, and choice. Imagine walking through a modern city at dusk. Neon lights flicker, conversations hum, and subtle gestures an approving smile, a carefully phrased compliment, a moment of attentive listening hold power not unlike the gestures in a Renaissance palace. Machiavelli's lessons remind us to observe, to reflect, and to notice patterns before committing fully. Modern tools may change how people communicate, yet the human tendencies they reveal, charm, flattery, inconsistency, loyalty, and deception, remain constant. The core skill is awareness, the ability to read behavior beneath the surface, and to recognize alignment between words and action. Even today, desire can cloud judgment. A fleeting attraction may feel urgent, a charming smile may feel convincing, and the initial glow of attention can feel like connection. Machiavelli teaches that these feelings, while deeply human, are signals to be examined, not guides to be followed blindly. Observing patterns, noticing how attention and care are distributed over time, and reflecting on consistency allows a man to engage authentically without surrendering discernment. History's lessons are mirrored in the modern experience. Charm alone does not guarantee loyalty. Beauty alone does not guarantee alignment, and immediate pleasure does not guarantee lasting understanding. Modern relationships, whether in dating apps, workplaces, or social circles, require the same blend of observation and reflection. Machiavelli advised patience in noticing behavior, mindfulness in interpreting intention, and clarity in understanding the alignment of words and actions. By applying these principles today, a man can navigate connection with insight, avoiding the traps of impulsive desire, and engaging in relationships that honor both heart and reason. Machiavelli's advice is not a manual for manipulation, but a framework for awareness, guiding one to perceive truth beneath appearances. There's also a quietly comforting lesson here. Human nature, though consistent, is navigable. Awareness, reflection, and attentiveness allow connection without surrender, understanding without cynicism, and intimacy without blind vulnerability. Machiavelli's wisdom bridges centuries, reminding us that careful observation and thoughtful discernment are timeless tools for navigating love, desire, and human interaction. As you drift into thought, imagine walking through the city streets, noticing subtle patterns of behavior, listening to tones, observing gestures, and sensing alignment between words and action. Let Machiavelli's lessons settle softly into your awareness, that history's insights are alive today, guiding perception, judgment, and connection. Allow this reflection to blend with your own experience, teaching that careful observation, awareness, and discernment illuminate not only the actions of others, but the currents of your own heart, helping you navigate relationships with clarity, depth, and quiet confidence. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, choosing a partner without losing yourself. Choosing a partner is a deeply personal act, yet it is also a mirror reflecting our own values, boundaries, and sense of self. Machiavelli's reflections remind us that while desire and attraction are natural, they should never completely overshadow who you are. In every era, men who surrendered entirely to passion risked losing not only clarity, but also the foundation of their own identity. Today, as in centuries past, the challenge remains the same: to engage in love fully, yet remain anchored in awareness, principle, and self-respect. Imagine a quiet evening, where thoughts drift gently like leaves on a slow river. In this space, one considers not only the allure of another person, but also one's own intentions, needs, and boundaries. Machiavelli would suggest that careful reflection and observation are essential. To choose wisely, one must notice patterns of behavior, consistency of words and actions, and alignment of values, without erasing one's own voice or principles. Desire is not to be denied, but to be tempered with understanding, ensuring that attachment grows from mutual respect rather than blind surrender. History is full of men who lost themselves in the pursuit of beauty, charm, or fleeting attention. Their judgment, clouded by longing, led to decisions that cost them influence, stability, or even peace of mind. Machiavelli's timeless advice emphasizes the importance of observation, to see clearly, to notice alignment between words and action, and to reflect on whether connection enhances rather than diminishes one's sense of self. Awareness is the bridge between desire and discernment, allowing engagement in relationships without self-erasure. Modern life adds its own complexities. Instant communication, social media, and curated impressions can make charm feel immediate, and attention feel more intense than at island. In this landscape, choosing a partner without losing oneself requires patience, mindfulness, and careful reflection. One must observe consistency, assess intentions, and maintain personal boundaries. Machiavelli's principles guide this process, reminding us that clarity, self-awareness, and the courage to pause are essential tools for navigating connection without compromise. Yet there is a gentle meditative truth here. Protecting oneself is not rejection. It is respect for both your heart and the others. Choosing a partner consciously allows space for both growth and connection, where desire flows freely but is balanced by reflection. Self-awareness becomes a lens through which intimacy is not only experienced, but understood. Machiavelli's insights teach that balance between heart and mind is not only possible, but profoundly liberating, allowing love to flourish without losing integrity or identity. As you drift into thought, imagine sitting in a quiet room, noticing both the excitement of desire and the calm presence of self-awareness. Observe patterns of attention, consistency of behavior, and subtle alignment of values. Let Machiavelli's guidance settle softly in your mind, that choosing a partner wisely requires observing both the other and oneself, balancing longing with discernment, and engaging fully, without surrendering your own sense of who you are. Allow this reflection to weave quietly into your awareness, fostering calm, clarity, and gentle confidence as you navigate the delicate, intimate, and profound art of choosing a partner in the modern world. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Recognizing red flags before it's too late. Red flags are subtle. They do not announce themselves with fanfare. They appear as small inconsistencies, quiet hesitations, or patterns that repeat in ways that can easily be overlooked. Machiavelli observed that even the wisest men are susceptible to being blinded by charm, beauty, or desire. History is filled with stories of rulers, generals, and advisors who ignored these subtle signs, only to face betrayal, disappointment, or loss. Recognizing red flags is not a practice of cynicism. It is a practice of awareness, patience, and gentle discernment. Imagine walking through a softly lit corridor, noticing shadows that shift quietly across the walls. These shadows represent patterns, small behaviors, choices, and gestures that hint at intention, consistency, and alignment. Machiavelli would suggest that careful observation, over time, reveals these patterns more clearly than initial impressions. A kind word that appears only when convenient, a gesture of attention that fades under stress, or a promise repeated without action, all are whispers of truth. The key is not to rush, but to observe patiently, allowing the narrative of behavior to unfold over time. History demonstrates the cost of overlooking these signals. Kings captivated by beauty, generals enchanted by flattery, or advisors swayed by charm often discovered too late that their judgment had been clouded. Their missteps were rarely a matter of ignorance. They were a matter of overlooking consistency, failing to align words with actions, or letting desire override careful reflection. Machiavelli teaches that the ability to notice and interpret these red flags requires attentiveness and the courage to reflect honestly, even when it is uncomfortable or inconvenient. In the modern world, these lessons remain equally relevant. Technology may change the way people communicate, but it cannot alter the patterns of human behavior. Social media, dating apps, and curated impressions create noise, making subtle inconsistencies harder to detect. Observing behavior over time, noticing alignment between intention and action, and trusting one's instincts are more important than ever. Red flags are not always dramatic. They often whisper, repeat, and accumulate until they become undeniable. Recognition, before it is too late, is an act of wisdom and self-preservation. There is a reflective, almost meditative truth in this practice. Awareness of red flags does not diminish hope or affection. It preserves clarity and integrity. By noticing subtle signs early, one can engage in relationships consciously, aligning desire with discernment. Machiavelli's timeless insight encourages observation, reflection, and patience, reminding us that understanding the small, repeated signals of behavior is more valuable than surrendering to immediate impressions or fleeting charm. As you drift softly into thought, imagine walking again through that corridor of subtle shadows. Observe the gentle signals, the quiet repetitions, and the alignment or misalignment between word and action. Let your mind trace these patterns with calm awareness, allowing insight to emerge naturally. Allow Machiavelli's guidance to settle softly in your consciousness. Recognizing red flags is not fear, but clarity, not cynicism, but wisdom. And through observation, patience, and reflection, you can navigate connection with discernment, protecting both heart and mind while still allowing space for genuine intimacy to flourish. Now, let's move on to the next chapter: balancing love and logic. Love and logic, at first glance, appear to inhabit opposite realms. Love is spontaneous, emotional, and fluid. Logic is measured, reflective, and structured. Yet Machiavelli observed that the wisest men, whether in politics, strategy, or matters of the heart, understood that neither can function optimally in isolation. Desire without discernment can cloud judgment, while logic without warmth can render connection cold and transactional. True understanding and the ability to navigate relationships wisely arises when love and logic are balanced, each informing the other, creating a harmony between heart and mind. Imagine sitting by a softly flowing river, the water carrying reflections of light and shadow, each movement shifting subtly yet purposefully. Love, like the river, is dynamic, responsive, and deeply moving. Logic, like the riverbank, provides structure, guidance, and perspective. Machiavelli would suggest that to navigate human relationships successfully, one must allow the fluidity of emotion to exist, but also maintain the steady, discerning presence of reason. Observing patterns, noting consistency between words and actions, and reflecting on intentions, allow desire to guide without overwhelming, creating a space where both connection and clarity coexist. History provides countless examples of the consequences of imbalance. Men who followed passion blindly often overlooked patterns of deception, misalignment, or inconsistency, discovering too late the cost of surrendering discernment. Conversely, those who allowed logic to dominate entirely sometimes missed opportunities for genuine intimacy, connection, and understanding. Machiavelli recognized that the ideal lies in the middle, an attentive engagement with the heart, tempered and guided by reflection and observation. Desire can illuminate truth, reveal priorities, and motivate action, but only when observed through the lens of awareness and clarity. In modern life, the balance between love and logic is challenged constantly. Rapid communication, social media impressions, and curated identities amplify the immediacy of emotion, while reducing opportunities for reflection. Machiavelli's principles remind us to slow down, observe behavior over time, and consider alignment between intention and action. Logic acts as a compass, guiding the heart through patterns of behavior, while love provides the energy, empathy, and engagement necessary for meaningful connection. Together, they form a navigation system for modern relationships, allowing one to pursue desire consciously and intentionally. There is also a contemplative, meditative lesson here. Balancing love and logic does not diminish the joy or intensity of connection. It amplifies understanding, presence, and harmony. Awareness of both emotion and reason allows one to navigate attraction with depth, patience, and insight. Machiavelli's timeless wisdom suggests that the most enduring relationships, the most effective partnerships, and the most satisfying connections arise when desire is observed, interpreted, and harmonized with careful reflection. As you drift gently into thought, imagine the river flowing quietly before you, its currents both fluid and guided, reflecting light and shadow alike. Sense the rhythm of desire and the steady presence of reflection, noting how each informs the other. Let Machiavelli's insight settle softly in your mind, that love and logic, when balanced, create a harmony that illuminates connection, clarifies judgment, and deepens intimacy. Allow this awareness to weave gently through your thoughts, fostering calm, clarity, and a serene understanding of how heart and mind can coexist gracefully, even in the most delicate and profound experiences of attachment and affection. Now, let's move on to the next chapter: how to protect your heart using historical lessons. The heart is delicate, yet resilient. History demonstrates that even the strongest men can falter when desire, trust, or charm blinds judgment. Machiavelli observed patterns in human behavior that repeat across time, patterns that reveal how attachment can be both rewarding and risky. Protecting the heart does not mean closing it off. It means observing, reflecting, and understanding human tendencies, so that connection flows with awareness rather than surrender. The past becomes a guide, showing the subtle signs that signal alignment, loyalty, or potential misjudgment. Imagine a quiet study, bathed in soft light, filled with the echoes of stories from centuries past. Kings, generals, philosophers, and ordinary men faced the same emotional currents we experience today. They encountered charm that dazzled, flattery that misled, and attachment that clouded judgment. Machiavelli's insights offer a map for navigating these currents, emphasizing observation over impulse, reflection over reaction, and discernment over blind longing. By learning from history, one can engage fully in relationships without losing the clarity and strength that protect the heart. Historical examples are both cautionary and instructive. Rulers who ignored subtle inconsistencies, generals who trusted without verification, and men who surrendered entirely to desire often discovered the cost of misplaced confidence. Conversely, those who observed behavior over time, noted alignment between words and action, and reflected on intention, preserved their emotional and strategic integrity. Machiavelli teaches that protection does not require cynicism. It requires attentiveness, patience, and a willingness to notice patterns that reveal the true nature of connection. In the modern world, the lessons remain strikingly relevant. Technology, social media, and rapid communication create both opportunity and distraction. Signals can be amplified, misinterpreted, or obscured. The heart remains vulnerable. And yet, with careful observation, historical insight, and reflective patience, one can navigate relationships consciously, observing consistency, recognizing subtle cues, and allowing time for patterns to emerge, preserves clarity, builds resilience, and enables engagement that is both deep and aware. There is also a meditative truth here. Protecting the heart is an act of respect. Respect for oneself, for the other, and for the subtle forces that shape connection. By applying historical lessons, one can anticipate potential pitfalls, recognize misalignment, and choose engagement that nurtures both heart and mind. Machiavelli's wisdom reminds us that protection is not avoidance. It is a form of presence, awareness, and gentle guidance, allowing desire and connection to flourish without compromising clarity, self-respect, or integrity. As you drift softly into thought, imagine sitting quietly, observing the patterns of past decisions, gestures, and behaviors. Sense how the lessons of history whisper quietly, offering guidance for your own choices, allowing you to engage with care, presence, and insight. Let Machiavelli's reflections settle gently in your mind, that the heart, while vulnerable, can be safeguarded through awareness, patience, and reflection. Allow this understanding to blend with your own intuition, fostering calm, clarity, and a serene confidence as you navigate connection, desire, and the timeless currents of human interaction. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Reading people like a political strategist. Observation is the quiet art of understanding. Machiavelli often emphasized that the wise ruler or advisor must read people not only for their words, but for their actions, intentions, and patterns over time. The same principle applies to relationships. For love and connection are themselves a subtle form of politics. To navigate them successfully, one must cultivate the ability to observe carefully, notice consistency, and interpret behavior with insight, much like a strategist surveying a complex battlefield. Imagine sitting in a softly lit room, watching a conversation unfold with calm attention. Words are spoken, gestures appear, and the rhythm of behavior carries a quiet message. Some signals are obvious, others are barely perceptible. A hesitation, a fleeting glance, a shift in tone. Machiavelli would remind you that understanding these signals is not manipulation, but awareness. By noticing patterns over time, the subtle interplay of desire and intention, one can gauge alignment, loyalty, and authenticity. This practice transforms the way we engage, allowing connection without losing discernment. History provides countless examples of this careful observation in action. Leaders and advisors who read intentions accurately could prevent betrayal, align allies, and navigate complex networks of influence. Those who ignored subtle patterns or allowed charm and flattery to cloud judgment often suffered losses far greater than anticipated. In personal relationships, the stakes may seem smaller, but the patterns remain the same. Consistency, alignment, and subtle cues reveal far more than initial impressions or surface-level attraction. Machiavelli teaches that awareness of these patterns provides clarity, confidence, and protection. In the modern world, the practice of reading people is both more challenging and more necessary. Instant messaging, curated social media profiles, and filtered impressions can obscure true behavior. Yet even here, consistency or lack thereof emerges over time. Observing how attention is distributed, how words match action, and how emotional patterns unfold allows one to perceive the deeper currents beneath surface interactions. A political strategist's eye, applied to human connection, reveals intention, reliability, and authenticity, allowing engagement with both heart and mind intact. There is a reflective truth here. Reading people deeply is not about suspicion, it is about clarity. Awareness allows connection without blind surrender, and understanding patterns creates a sense of safety while still permitting intimacy. Machiavelli's wisdom reminds us that the human heart operates within predictable tendencies, and that observing carefully, noting alignment, and reflecting on patterns fosters insight, balance, and discernment. As you drift gently into thought, imagine observing interactions with calm presence, noting subtle gestures, tone, and consistency over time. Sense the rhythm of human behavior, the quiet signals that reveal intention, and the patterns that guide alignment or misalignment. Let Machiavelli's reflections settle softly in your mind. That reading people like a strategist is a practice of awareness, not control, of discernment, not cynicism, and of patience, not haste. Allow this awareness to weave gently into your consciousness, fostering clarity, calm, and quiet confidence as you navigate connection, desire, and the intricate dance of human interaction. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why awareness beats infatuation. Infatuation is swift, intoxicating, and immediate. It dazzles the senses, amplifies desire, and creates a sense of urgency that can feel irresistible. Yet Machiavelli observed that even the wisest men, when caught in the current of infatuation, could lose clarity, misread intentions, and make decisions that hindsight reveals as unwise. Awareness, he suggested, provides the antidote not by suppressing feeling, but by observing it carefully, allowing reflection, and noticing the subtle cues that reveal the true nature of connection. Imagine a quiet room bathed in the soft glow of twilight. You feel the pull of desire, the excitement of attention, the warmth of connection. Infatuation feels immediate, intense, and all-encompassing. Machiavelli would remind you that the brilliance of such feelings can blind perception, allowing charm, beauty, and eloquence to overshadow consistency, alignment, and integrity. Awareness is the gentle, steady light that softens this dazzle, illuminating behavior, patterns, and intention without diminishing the beauty of feeling. History is full of examples where infatuation eclipsed judgment. Leaders, generals, and influential men fell for appearances, gestures, or fleeting attention, only to face consequences that clarity could have prevented. Their missteps were rarely a matter of desire itself, but of allowing emotion to outpace reflection. Machiavelli's insight is that awareness, the patient observation of consistency, the careful noting of alignment between words and action, The reflection on patterns over time creates a buffer between impulse and decision, allowing connection to flourish without compromising judgment. In modern life, infatuation often arrives faster than ever. Instant messaging, social media, and curated impressions amplify charm and attention, creating a sense of urgency that can overshadow reflection. Awareness becomes not only a tool, but a necessity. Observing behavior over time, noticing subtle cues, and reflecting on alignment of intention allows one to engage with both heart and mind intact. Awareness does not diminish desire. It refines it, creating a space where emotion and discernment coexist. There is a meditative truth here. Awareness is the lens through which infatuation can be experienced safely, fully, and wisely. Machiavelli's guidance reminds us that human nature, while consistent, can be navigated with insight. Desire, attention, and attraction need not lead to misjudgment if observed patiently and reflected upon thoughtfully. Awareness is not suppression. It is presence, clarity, and quiet discernment. Through this practice, connection becomes deeper, wiser, and more enduring, allowing both heart and mind to participate harmoniously. As you drift gently into thought, imagine the glow of infatuation, softening under the steady light of awareness. Notice patterns, subtle gestures, and the alignment of intention and action over time. Let Machiavelli's insight settle softly in your mind. That awareness guides connection, clarifies perception, and balances desire with discernment. Allow this understanding to flow quietly through your consciousness, fostering calm, reflection, and quiet confidence as you navigate the currents of human attraction, emotion, and connection. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, lessons every modern man should know. Life is both timeless and ever-changing. The lessons of the past ripple into the present, offering guidance for navigating desire, connection, and choice. Machiavelli's reflections, though centuries old, contain insights that remain profoundly relevant for the modern man. Observing patterns, discerning intention, balancing emotion with reflection, and engaging with awareness are practices that protect the heart while fostering meaningful connection. These lessons are not rules, but gentle signposts, guiding thoughtful engagement with the human experience. Imagine walking through a quiet, sun-dappled forest. Each tree represents a lesson, each shadow a subtle insight, and each breeze a reminder of the impermanence and fluidity of life. Machiavelli would suggest that the modern man, much like a careful traveler in this forest, must move attentively. Observe behavior over time, notice alignment between words and actions, and reflect on both desire and intention. These practices reveal patterns that casual observation cannot, allowing one to navigate connection with clarity and discernment. History offers abundant guidance. Kings who surrendered to charm, generals who trusted without observation, and men who allowed desire to eclipse judgment often faced unforeseen consequences. Conversely, those who engaged thoughtfully, observed patterns of consistency, and reflected on alignment between intention and action, preserved not only their influence but also their inner equilibrium. Machiavelli teaches that these principles apply to the modern man as well. Careful observation, patience, and awareness of subtle cues are timeless tools that allow one to navigate both desire and commitment wisely. In modern life, distractions abound. Social media amplifies impressions, curated personas, obscure reality, and instant communication creates the illusion of intimacy. The modern man faces unique challenges, yet the underlying patterns of human behavior remain constant. Observing consistency, understanding intention, and reflecting on patterns over time allow connection to flourish without surrendering discernment. Machiavelli's timeless guidance reminds us that the essence of wisdom lies in harmonizing observation, reflection, and engagement. Letting desire inform but not dictate action, there is also a contemplative, gentle truth in this practice. These lessons are not about control, restriction, or mistrust. They are about clarity, presence, and self-respect. Awareness allows the heart to engage fully, to experience attraction and intimacy without compromise, and to navigate relationships with patience and insight. Machiavelli's guidance bridges centuries, offering the modern man a framework for understanding human behavior, managing desire, and fostering connection that is both thoughtful and authentic. As you drift softly into thought, imagine walking through the forest, noticing each subtle detail: the alignment of light and shadow, the movement of leaves in the breeze, the quiet rhythm of life unfolding around you. Let Machiavelli's lessons settle gently into your mind, that observing, reflecting, and engaging with clarity protects the heart, illuminates intention, and allows meaningful connection to flourish. Allow this reflection to flow quietly through your awareness, fostering calm, insight, and quiet confidence as you navigate the subtle currents of human behavior, desire, and connection in the modern world. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Avoiding repeat mistakes in love. Love has a rhythm, a cadence, and, often, a memory. The choices we make, the patterns we follow, and the lessons we overlook have a way of repeating until observed with clarity. Machiavelli observed that men throughout history often fell into cycles of misjudgment, surrendering to charm, overlooking subtle inconsistencies, and allowing desire to eclipse reflection. Avoiding repeat mistakes, he suggested, requires patience, awareness, and the willingness to see patterns both in others and in oneself. Imagine sitting quietly beside a flowing stream, the water reflecting past and present simultaneously, as if history itself were passing gently by. Each ripple mirrors a choice once made, a misstep repeated, a lesson waiting to be understood. To navigate love wisely, one must trace these ripples carefully, noticing how past experiences shape perception, desire, and expectation. Machiavelli would remind you that the wise approach is not avoidance, but observation. Learning from patterns of behavior, understanding alignment between words and actions, and reflecting on your own tendencies to ensure that history does not quietly repeat itself. History is filled with cautionary tales. Kings captivated by beauty, generals enthralled by flattery, and advisors misled by charm discovered too late the consequences of inattention. Their errors were rarely about desire itself, but about a lack of careful observation, reflection, and discernment. Machiavelli's timeless insight suggests that recognizing these cycles allows a man to engage consciously, noticing patterns that repeat and choosing response over reaction. Avoiding repeat mistakes is less about fear and more about awareness, a quiet attentiveness that nurtures clarity, wisdom, and emotional resilience. In modern life, the patterns are subtler, but no less real. Technology accelerates interactions, amplifies impressions, and creates a sense of urgency that can cloud judgment. Past mistakes, if unexamined, can reappear in new forms, disguised by novelty or charm. Observing patterns over time, reflecting on alignment between words and actions, and noting recurring behaviors allow one to engage with both heart and mind intact. Machiavelli's principles remind us that insight and reflection are shields as well as guides, enabling the modern man to navigate attachment without surrendering clarity or self-respect. There is a gentle, meditative lesson in this practice. Learning from history and from oneself fosters freedom. Awareness allows the heart to experience desire, connection, and intimacy fully, without repeating the missteps that lead to regret or disappointment. Patterns become visible, alignment becomes discernible, and reflection transforms instinct into understanding. Machiavelli's guidance illuminates the path. Through observation, discernment, and patience, one can engage deeply while preserving wisdom, integrity, and inner peace. As you drift softly into thought, imagine the stream before you, reflecting not only the present moment but also the echoes of past experiences. Notice the repeating ripples, the subtle currents, and the patterns that emerge over time. Let Machiavelli's insight settle quietly in your mind. That awareness, reflection, and careful observation allow love to be experienced fully while avoiding the silent repetition of mistakes. Allow this understanding to flow gently through your consciousness, fostering calm, clarity, and quiet confidence as you navigate the delicate currents of human connection, desire, and emotional insight. Now, let's move on to the next chapter: how Machiavelli can make you a better chooser. Choosing wisely is both an art and a practice. Machiavelli, with his keen understanding of human nature, observed that even the most intelligent and powerful men were vulnerable to desire, deception, and misjudgment. Yet his insights also offered a path toward clarity, a way to engage with others thoughtfully, observe patterns, and make decisions that align with both heart and reason. In this way, Machiavelli's guidance can transform the modern man into a better chooser, one who navigates attraction, connection, and intimacy with awareness, discernment, and quiet confidence. Imagine a quiet evening where thought flows gently like a slow-moving river. Each choice, each observation, each reflection carries subtle power. Machiavelli would suggest that to become a better chooser, one must notice not only the allure of the present moment, but also the patterns of behavior that emerge over time. Words must be weighed against action, charm against consistency, and fleeting desire against lasting alignment. Through this careful, reflective practice, the act of choosing becomes deliberate rather than reactive, thoughtful rather than impulsive. History offers countless lessons. Powerful men, captivated by beauty or flattery, often discovered too late the consequences of surrendering discernment. Yet those who observed carefully, reflected patiently, and noted patterns of behavior navigated relationships with greater clarity, avoiding missteps and preserving both influence and emotional balance. Machiavelli teaches that the modern man can apply these same principles. Observe consistently, reflect consciously, and allow awareness to guide choice. Desire and attraction remain vital, yet they are complemented by careful attention to alignment, integrity, and intention. In modern life, the practice of choosing wisely is challenged by speed, technology, and the subtle complexity of human interaction. Social media amplifies charm, instant communication can mislead perception, and curated impressions obscure reality. Yet the timeless principles remain. Patience, observation, and discernment create the foundation for making decisions that honor both heart and mind. Machiavelli's guidance encourages the modern man to slow down, notice patterns, and reflect carefully before committing, allowing connection to be both genuine and wise. There is also a meditative, reassuring truth here. Being a better chooser does not mean rejecting desire, avoiding intimacy, or mistrusting others. It means cultivating awareness, aligning perception with reality, and engaging thoughtfully. By observing behavior, reflecting on intentions, and weighing alignment with one's own values, a man can navigate connection with clarity, confidence, and grace. Machiavelli's insights, far from cynical, are deeply empowering. They provide the tools to experience desire fully while protecting discernment and self-respect. As you drift gently into thought, imagine yourself sitting quietly by a river, observing the patterns of light and shadow, noticing the subtle currents of behavior, and reflecting on the alignment of words and actions. Let Machiavelli's wisdom settle softly in your mind. That choosing wisely is a practice of patience, awareness, and discernment, allowing connection, intimacy, and desire to coexist harmoniously with clarity, self-respect, and understanding. Allow this awareness to flow gently through your consciousness, fostering calm, confidence, and quiet clarity as you navigate the delicate, timeless, and profound art of making choices that honor both heart and mind. Now, let's move on to the next chapter: the one rule about women no one talks about. There is a quiet truth, one that history whispers but few speak aloud. It is subtle, almost invisible in the clamor of desire, charm, and attraction. Machiavelli observed it centuries ago. Women, Like men, are complex beings shaped by intention, circumstance, and strategy. The one rule that history and experience reveal, yet rarely articulated, is this: never assume that surface allure reflects inner alignment. The charm, beauty, or attention that dazzles the senses may conceal patterns, priorities, or intentions that only time and careful observation can reveal. Imagine a gentle twilight where the world slows and subtle signals become visible in the soft glow of awareness. In this quiet space, Machiavelli's insight emerges clearly. Attraction is immediate, desire is intoxicating, but alignment is revealed slowly, over patterns, gestures, and actions repeated across time. To ignore this is to risk being swept away by surface impressions, entrusting the heart to the allure of momentary fascination. History shows us repeatedly that men who overlooked this quiet rule often surrendered judgment, lost influence, and suffered the emotional consequences of misplaced trust. Consider the patterns of past centuries. Kings, generals, and advisors often misread charm as loyalty, flattery as alignment, or beauty as a guarantee of compatibility. Their error was rarely in feeling attraction. It was in allowing desire to eclipse observation, in prioritizing the immediate over the long arc of discernment. Machiavelli teaches that the heart, while naturally drawn to surface delight, must also attend to subtle signals, repeated behaviors, and consistent alignment between words and actions. In doing so, one protects both desire and judgment, allowing connection without surrender. In the modern world, the rule remains just as vital, yet easier to overlook. Social media, curated profiles, and instant communication create impressions that can appear convincing, charming, or even intimate, but alignment is revealed in patterns, not moments. Observing behavior over time, noticing consistency, and reflecting on intentions allow one to engage fully while preserving discernment. Awareness becomes a shield, not a wall. It is the quiet practice of noticing subtle currents beneath the surface of attraction, guiding judgment without diminishing desire. There is a meditative truth in this practice. The one rule is not about restriction or fear. It is about clarity. To honor both heart and mind, one must observe, reflect, and allow patterns to unfold before surrendering fully to desire. Machiavelli's wisdom bridges centuries, reminding us that subtle awareness, careful observation, and patience are timeless tools for navigating connection, attraction, and the complex currents of human intention. As you drift softly into thought, imagine a quiet evening where every gesture, every word, and every pause becomes a gentle signal. Sense the patterns emerging, notice the alignment or misalignment between intention and action, and let Machiavelli's insights settle softly in your awareness. That the one rule about women, the subtle truth history seldom voices, is simple yet profound. Allow this reflection to blend quietly into your consciousness, fostering calm, clarity, and quiet confidence as you navigate desire, attraction, and the timeless art of choosing wisely. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. What men ignore that history screams about. History speaks in whispers and echoes, yet many fail to hear its warnings. Machiavelli observed that men, even the most powerful and perceptive, often overlooked subtle patterns that foretold disappointment, betrayal, or misalignment in relationships. These are not grand, dramatic signals. They are quiet, almost invisible, yet they recur consistently across centuries. What men ignore, history screams about. Alignment between words and actions, consistency in behavior, and the subtle interplay of intention and desire. To ignore these signals is to repeat mistakes that generations before have paid dearly to learn. Imagine a quiet study bathed in the soft glow of evening light, where stories from the past seem to hover in the air, waiting to be noticed. Each story is a thread, a gentle signal of what happens when charm is mistaken for loyalty, beauty for integrity, or attention for alignment. Machiavelli would remind us that patterns reveal truth far more reliably than impression, attraction, or emotion alone. Yet, Across history, men have allowed desire to overshadow observation, ignoring subtle signals that would have guided them toward clarity and security. Consider the rulers, generals, and advisors whose judgment faltered. The king captivated by a flattering courtier, the advisor enchanted by charm, the general seduced by beauty all demonstrate a timeless pattern. Ignoring subtle signs can lead to consequences that echo far beyond the moment. Machiavelli's principle is clear. Observing alignment, noticing consistency, and reflecting on intention are essential tools for navigating both human connection and power. Awareness transforms fleeting attraction into conscious engagement, protecting both heart and judgment. In the modern world, these warnings are equally vital. Technology and social media amplify charm, creating impressions that feel immediate and intimate. Instant messaging can mask inconsistency, and curated images can obscure true intention. Yet patterns still emerge, gestures still repeat, and alignment still reveals itself over time. History's whispers are present in every interaction if one listens carefully, observes patiently, and reflects thoughtfully. Ignoring these signals is not just unwise, it is to surrender clarity to illusion. There is a reflective, almost meditative truth here. History does not scold, it guides. Its lessons are subtle, requiring patience and attention to fully perceive. By noticing the quiet signals of alignment, repetition, and integrity, one can engage with both heart and mind intact. Honoring desire while protecting judgment. Machiavelli's guidance reminds us that awareness is not fear, it is clarity, discernment, and the gentle practice of observing life with a quiet, attentive mind. As you drift softly into thought, imagine the whispers of history surrounding you like a gentle breeze, carrying stories of choices made and mistakes repeated. Sense the subtle patterns, the alignment between words and action, and the quiet signals that reveal intention. Let Machiavelli's insight settle softly in your mind, that what men often ignore, what history repeatedly emphasizes, is the necessity of careful observation, reflection, and patience. Allow this awareness to weave gently into your consciousness, fostering calm, clarity, and quiet confidence as you navigate desire, connection, and the timeless art of reading both people and circumstance. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. A secret Machiavelli, strategy for love, revealed. There is a strategy hidden in plain sight, a principle that Machiavelli observed quietly, almost like a gentle current beneath the roar of desire and charm. It is not a trick, nor a manipulation. It is a disciplined approach to observation, reflection, and alignment. Machiavelli understood that love, like power, flows through patterns, gestures, and intentions, and that careful attention to these patterns allows one to navigate desire with clarity and confidence. This is the secret strategy: to engage fully while observing quietly, allowing insight to guide the heart without extinguishing its warmth. Imagine sitting in a quiet garden as dusk falls, the air thick with the scent of flowers, and the world slowing into a gentle rhythm. Here, the secret strategy unfolds not in grand gestures, but in quiet observation. Machiavelli would suggest noticing patterns over time, the consistency between words and actions, the alignment of intention and behavior, and the subtle repetitions that reveal true character. Desire provides energy, warmth, and connection, yet it is tempered and guided by careful reflection. This balance creates a form of engagement that is both deep and wise, allowing the heart to experience attraction without surrendering clarity. History demonstrates the effectiveness of this strategy. Leaders, generals, and influential men who applied careful observation, reflection, and attentiveness navigated relationships with precision and protection. They noticed misalignments early, recognized recurring patterns, and responded with clarity rather than impulse. The strategy is deceptively simple. Observe before surrendering, reflect before committing, and allow the patterns of behavior to reveal truth over time. Charm and beauty may enchant, but alignment, consistency, and integrity guide lasting engagement. In the modern world, This strategy is both more challenging and more necessary. Social media, instant messaging, and curated impressions accelerate attraction and desire, creating illusions of intimacy and connection. Yet the same timeless principles apply. Patterns emerge over time, intentions reveal themselves in repeated behavior, and alignment between words and actions speaks louder than fleeting charm. Machiavelli's secret strategy reminds us that engagement can be fully felt while remaining conscious, allowing desire to coexist with discernment and reflection. There is a quiet, meditative lesson here. The strategy is not about control, manipulation, or mistrust. It is about awareness, patience, and a gentle attentiveness that protects the heart while nurturing connection. By observing, reflecting, and noting alignment over time, one cultivates a clarity that strengthens both judgment and emotional presence. Machiavelli's wisdom demonstrates that the art of love is inseparable from the art of awareness. To be fully engaged, yet fully conscious, is to practice love with insight and care. As you drift softly into thought, imagine the garden around you, every petal, shadow, and gentle breeze carrying subtle signals of alignment and intention. Notice the patterns emerging quietly in the behaviors of those around you, the consistencies that reveal character, and the rhythms that speak of true intention. Let Machiavelli's secret strategy settle softly in your mind. Observe patiently, reflect consistently, and allow alignment to guide engagement. Allow this awareness to flow gently through your consciousness, fostering calm, clarity, and quiet confidence as you navigate desire, attraction, and the profound, timeless currents of love and human connection. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, why your crush could be your worst mistake. A crush is like a sudden spark in the night, bright, captivating, and impossible to ignore. It floods the senses, heightens excitement, and awakens desire with an intensity that can feel irresistible. Yet Machiavelli reminds us that the allure of a crush can be deceptive. What seems immediate, intense, and thrilling may conceal patterns, intentions, or alignments that only time and reflection reveal. Your crush, if engaged without awareness, has the quiet potential to be your greatest misjudgment, a lesson that history repeatedly illustrates with soft, cautionary whispers. Imagine a quiet evening. The sky fading from gold to deep indigo. The world around you slowing into soft rhythm. In this stillness, the heart leaps toward fascination. Captivated by charm, beauty, or charisma, Machiavelli would ask you to pause, to notice the patterns beneath the initial glow, the gestures, the alignment of words and actions, the subtle consistencies that emerge only when observed with care. Infatuation is immediate, but insight is patient. Desire may be vibrant, but discernment is enduring. The contrast between these forces is where wisdom is born. History provides countless reminders of the cost of ignoring this dynamic. Powerful men, captivated by fleeting allure, often misjudged character, overlooked subtle inconsistencies, and misaligned priorities. The consequences could ripple through personal life, political alliances, and long-term strategy. Machiavelli's guidance is simple yet profound. A crush, like any other form of attraction, must be observed with patience. Observation allows alignment, consistency, and true intention to emerge, revealing whether desire leads toward connection or misstep. To act on a spark alone is to risk surrendering clarity to illusion. In modern life, the risk is amplified. Social media, instant messaging, and curated appearances create the illusion of intimacy and presence. Every message, image, or reaction can feel magnified, fueling the intensity of a crush. Yet, the underlying principles remain timeless. Patterns emerge over time. True intentions reveal themselves in repeated actions, and alignment between words and behavior offers insight that superficial charm cannot provide. Machiavelli's lesson is to approach fascination with patience and awareness, engaging the heart fully while letting discernment guide the path forward. There is a gentle, meditative truth in this. Recognizing the potential danger of a crush is not about suppression, fear, or cynicism. It is about cultivating awareness, slowing perception, and allowing patterns to reveal themselves. To engage consciously with desire is to honor both heart and mind, to preserve clarity while experiencing connection, and to navigate attraction with insight rather than impulse. Machiavelli's wisdom reminds us that awareness does not diminish intensity. It enriches it, transforming attraction from fleeting distraction into conscious understanding. As you drift softly into thought, imagine the night sky before you. Each star a signal, each subtle pattern a message. Sense the spark of fascination, but allow it to flow through the lens of observation and reflection. Notice the patterns of alignment, the subtle consistencies, and the gestures that reveal true intention. Let Machiavelli's insight settle softly in your mind, that a crush, while thrilling and immediate, must be approached with patience, reflection, and awareness, or it may quietly become a misstep disguised as desire. Allow this understanding to flow gently through your consciousness, fostering calm, clarity, and quiet confidence as you navigate the delicate, timeless dance between attraction, intention, and human connection. Now, let's move on to the next chapter, the shocking truth about desire, power, and choice. Desire, power, and choice, they are threads woven through the human experience, binding hearts, minds, and intentions together in ways that are both subtle and profound. Machiavelli, observing centuries of human behavior, understood that these forces are not separate. They interact quietly, often invisibly, shaping decisions, connections, and outcomes in ways few truly perceive. The truth is shocking, not because it is cruel, but because it is simple. Desire can cloud judgment, power can mislead perception, and choice, without reflection and awareness, can become a surrender to impulse rather than a deliberate act of wisdom. Imagine a quiet night, where the world has softened into shadows and gentle rhythm. In this stillness, consider how desire surges intense, urgent, compelling. It can illuminate the world with brilliance, yet it can also obscure subtle truths. Machiavelli observed that even the most powerful men were vulnerable to desire's intensity, allowing attraction, charm, or admiration to sway judgment. Power, too, has its illusions. The sense that authority or influence guarantees alignment, loyalty, or compatibility. Without awareness, the choices one makes under the simultaneous pull of desire and power can lead to mistakes repeated across history, echoing quietly in the lives of those who follow. History whispers with countless examples. Leaders, rulers, and influential men who allowed desire to eclipse discernment or power to obscure reality often faced consequences that were not immediately apparent. Charm misled, beauty distracted, loyalty faltered. Machiavelli's insight was that understanding the interaction of these forces allows one to act with wisdom, maintaining engagement without surrendering clarity. Choice, when guided by careful observation, reflection, and awareness of both desire and power, becomes not reactive, but deliberate. This is the quiet, transformative lesson he offers. Awareness turns intensity into insight. In the modern world, the interplay of desire, power, and choice is magnified by technology, rapid communication, and social perception. Social media can amplify charm, attention can distort reality, and the speed of interaction can accelerate attraction before reflection catches up. Yet the timeless principles remain. Patterns reveal truth over time. Alignment exposes authenticity, and careful observation protects both heart and judgment. Desire can inspire, power can create opportunity, and choice tempered by awareness can lead to connection that is both meaningful and wise. There is a meditative, reflective truth here. Understanding this dynamic is not about fear, mistrust, or cold calculation. It is about clarity, patience, and quiet presence. Desire, power, and choice are forces to engage with consciously, to notice without surrender, and to allow insight to guide action. Machiavelli's wisdom teaches that the most profound engagement comes when intensity and reflection coexist, when passion is informed by observation, and when choice emerges from awareness rather than impulse. As you drift gently into thought, imagine these forces as rivers flowing around you, desire rushing with warmth and urgency, power moving with quiet gravity, and choice forming a gentle channel that guides their convergence. Observe the currents, sense their interactions, and notice how patterns, gestures, and intentions reveal the shape of alignment and authenticity. Let Machiavelli's insight settle softly in your mind, that the relationship between desire, power, and choice is profound, and that understanding it allows the heart to experience connection fully while preserving clarity, discernment, and quiet confidence. Allow this awareness to flow gently through your consciousness, fostering calm, reflection, and deep insight as you navigate the subtle, timeless dance of attraction, intention, and human connection.